Good morning. Thank you for joining us
Good mo-
for the August 22nd, 2025 California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Wendy Strack, Chair of the Board. And before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. This meeting will also be available via a live webcast. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. For those of you who were not present yesterday, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our newest board member, Rebecca Thies, who was appointed by the Assembly to serve as a public member of the board. And Rebecca, would you like to say anything? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for the welcome. I'm really grateful to be here. I'm humbled to be in this room with all of the experience that you all have. I'm excited to learn from you. I know as a public member, I have a lot to learn, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so and to contribute to what you all accomplish. I'll say a little bit about myself, but before I do that, I just want to say, I really believe in the role that government has to play in consumer protection. And I also really believe in the role that a licensed therapist can play in the life of an individual. And I'm just excited to protect both of those and work to make them run better for people and for the state. I work for the Pew Charitable Trusts, which is located in Washington, D.C., but I live in Sacramento. I've spent most of my career in Washington, D.C., but moved back to Sacramento where I grew up during the pandemic. And I'm happy to be back. I'm close to family. But I still work on the East Coast, and it's a wonderful organization. I've been doing fiscal policy research for a lot of years. My team right now is focused on helping state budgets work better with their federal funds. So if you want to talk to me about that, I'm doing a lot of work in that field. Also did a lot of work around pandemic aid that state and local governments received during the pandemic. So I'm glad to be here. Hope I can contribute. And thank you for the introduction.
Thank you. Members, during roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or licensed member. Rachel, can you please call roll?
Wendy Strack,
Present, public member.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Present LPCC member.
Lorez Bailey,
Present public member.
Susan Friedman,
Present public member.
Justin Huft,
Present EM LMFT.
Christopher Jones,
Present LEP member, pronouns are he, him.
John Sovek,
Present LMFT member, pronouns he, him.
Rebecca Thies,
Present public member.
Eleanor Uribe,
Present LCSW member.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Present public board member, pronouns she, her.
and for the record, board member Kelly Ranasinghe is not present today. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin, I would like to note that we will not be discussing items 20, 23, 25, 26. So again, that's 20, 23, 25, and 26. Additionally, we'll be looking to take a lunch break around 11:30, depending on where we are with the item. Board staff, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Good morning. Steve Sodergren. I'm the Executive Officer of the Board.
Good morning. Marlon McManus, Assistant Executive Officer for the Board.
Roseanne Helms, Legislative Manager for the Board.
Christy Berger, Regulatory Manager for the Board.
Sarita Russo, Special Projects and Research Analyst for the Board.
Rachel Lanzoni, Budget Analyst for the Board.
And Sabina Knight, Legal Counsel for the Board.
Have we got everybody?
Now's the time for the public to introduce themselves if they'd like to. This is voluntary. Is there anyone who would like to introduce themselves this morning?
Oh, I'm all the way up. Good morning. My name is Sierra Smith. I run Open Paths Counseling Center, a nonprofit community counseling center serving historically marginalized communities in Los Angeles County.
Tall as her. Good morning, everyone. Kathy Atkins, Deputy Director of the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. Thanks for having us all here. Morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Sabrina Morris. I'm the president of California Association for LPCC.
Good morning, everyone. I am Suzette Garcia, and I am the CEO of California Association for License Professional Counselors.
Is the mic?
Yeah, I just heard from you.
I think so. Yeah.
Good morning, Ben Caldwell.
I think it's on.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. We need to check it. Okay. I think we might be checking the mic.
Oh, no, I think
Oh.
you didn't check the mic. Or... Oh, then I'll talk to him. You can keep continuing.
Oh, okay.
You can continue.
All right. Next is the board chair report. And the report shows the board member attendance for board meetings and committee meetings during the last fiscal year. Please let staff know if you believe there's errors. As a reminder, attendance at board and committee meetings is important. Then you'll also see a list of, in the materials, a list of all the upcoming board meetings for 2026. These are proposed dates and they may change as needed. So after this meeting, please let staff know if there are any dates that you might have contacts with. Conflicts, not contacts. All right. More coffee. All right, thank you. Are there any questions or notations on item 14? No. Any members of the public wish to comment on item 14? All right, seeing none, we will move on to 15, the executive officer report. Steve.
Excellent. Move this over. Good morning. So we'll run through this and then questions and answers after kind of a run through that. So hopefully take your notes on what you want to ask about. So I'm going to first discuss the budget. The board has an authorized budget of $14.061 million for fiscal year 24-25. We began the fiscal year with a reserve balance of $16.24 million. And we project to have a reserve balance at the end of the fiscal year at $23.6 million. The board projects the total expenditures and external costs to equal about $14.7 million by the end of the fiscal year. This will leave us with an ending reserve balance of $25.1 million, which is a 19.1 months reserve. And as you know, we will be working on our reserve through the fee reduction process. So we're not talking about that today, but we will at future board meetings. Revenue summary. We collected approximately $22.6 million in revenue and project to have a revenue at the end of the year at $23.6 million. And the total expenditures up till May 31st, we expended $12.1 million of our budget, which is approximately 86% of the budget. And by the end of the year, we're projecting to have spent $13.9 million, which is 99.5% of our total budget. Give me a pause here. Thank you. Next to the personnel update, had a lot of movement around this last quarter. We'd like to welcome Rachel Lanzone for accepting the budget analyst position with the board. And then we also have in the administration unit, Timothy Nevins accepted a position as an administrative support technician. In our criminal conviction unit, Timothy Coop accepted a position as an enforcement analyst. And the consumer complaint unit, we have Brandy Somas has accepted a promotional position as an enforcement analyst. In the examination unit and cashiering unit, Kama N, our very newest hiree, will be starting as a cashier soon in August, actually next week, I believe, as we have in there. And then in the LCSW and LPCC licensing unit, Martin Gamaz has taken a promotional opportunity to become another staff service analyst or licensing evaluator. So we're happy with that. We have had no departures in the last quarter. Additionally, we have requested to reclassify a management service technician position in our licensing unit to a staff service analyst position. And this is to create kind of a step increase and allow promotional opportunity within the board. And it kind of realigns all our license evaluators so they are under the same classification. So we are assuming that will go through and we'll be seeking another license evaluator in the licensing unit. Currently, we have 3 vacancies. One's it's a limited term management service technician in the registration unit as an evaluator. We are currently looking to schedule interviews for that. In the LMFT and LAP unit, we are recruiting for a staff service analyst, and this was actually part of our BCP where we were able to get an additional position for that unit. So that was nice, and it was great to bring on another body in that unit. So, and then the examination cashiering unit, the board has requested to backfill the staff service analyst position that was Brandy Somas's position. So we are working on that. Population, we continue to increase in our population. We issued 3,995 registration and licenses. And that brings us to a total of 151,854 registrants and licensees, which is a 2% gain over the third quarter. And in the fifth quarter, we're starting to report on supervisors. I think we're going to expand this a little bit more later on with this reporting, but we received 270 supervisor certifications, and the supervisor population is now at 15,125. Applications received and approved. Overall, we received approximately 35% more applications than we did in the previous quarter, and this is due to graduation season. The nice thing to report is that our application processing times measured in business days have decreased in the fourth quarter. And AMFTs, the registrant population is on average around 15 business days to process those applications. LMFT applications stayed about the same since the third quarter at 69 days. And LCSW applications increased a little bit to 58 days in the last quarter, and the LPCC application processing decreased by 1 day to 7 days. So we're kind of excited about that. The overall administration applications, those are renewals and name changes, address changes. We received approximately 2% less applications than we did in the third quarter. Most of those are actually online, available online, so they don't require a lot of staff involvement. And I always like to put at the end of the year kind of a 4-year trend cycle. And you can see that the licensing numbers there for applications. So licensing, our population increased considerably over the last 4 years. And the largest gains occurred in LMFT and LCSWs, and LPCCs and AMFTs experienced the fastest percentage growth. So we will see the LPCC licensing really, we'll see definite increases, more increases over the next few years for LPCCs. Total applications received over the last few years grew from around 16,000 to 21,000. It's about a 31% increase over the 4 years. And what I'd like to report is while the application volumes have increased, we've been able to maintain either the same or we've been able to reduce the processing times. So we will continue to work on that. The examination update, we administered approximately 6,367 exams in the fourth quarter, which represents a 6.6% gain over the quarter before. And excuse me here as I look at my notes. Personnel update. Okay. Where's 4? 15.4. There we go. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's got to keep it on. Okay. So the exam pass rate's 15.5. Sorry, you're getting that. 15.5. There we go. The exam statistics located on our website, we're actually presenting those a little bit differently. Before we were posting those in 6-month increments, but now we will start showing those in 1-year calendar increments. And then we are also working with Department of Consumer Affairs QBERT team. And the QBERT team is a team, part of the Office of Information Services. I apologize there. And so they kind of look at the reports and help us kind of draft up reports using the data that we have in our system. So we are working with them to find a different way to kind of present that data. There were 4 examination workshops that were conducted between April 1st and June 30th, and they were all in person. And we continue to work with the Office of Professional Examination Services in recruiting for subject matter experts to help us develop the exams. And we had a little note in there about the Office of Professional Examination Services. There's been a change in leadership, and Amy Welch-Gandy is now, who has been with OPES for quite a while, is now taking over leadership. And in June, just as kind of to give staff more information and to kind of expose them to what OPS really does, they actually went over there and had a tour with OPS. And I think we're going to look at possibly having them, sit in or look at the actual examination process, like the item development work groups and such. So just as kind of education for them. ASWB, we just renewed the contract for ASWB, and that's going to be through July 1st, 2025 to June 30th. And that was executed on July 28th, 2025. And I'd like to note that there was an examination administrative change to how the ASWB clinical exam is given to the test takers. They recently implemented a change that we don't really explain the change here, but the change is actually splits the exam up into 2 components. They have an 85 questions that they can actually go through and then take a break, actually scheduled break, and then complete the next 85 questions. ASWB made that change because they were hearing from candidates currently before candidates would actually have to take a 15-minute break, and that would come out of their time from their 4-hour time. So this allows them to take a break and not take out of the 4-hour time. So they'll keep looking at that and keep assessing whether that's working or not, but they have so far not seen any detrimental impact to the candidates. NBCC contract expired, the National Board of Clinical Counselors. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to on these acronyms here. National Board of Clinical Counselor. They process our, they administer our exam for the clinical counselors, the clinical exam. And their contract will be expiring June 30th, 2025. And the request for the new contract was submitted to DCA's contract unit on March 13th, 2025. And we are looking at finalizing that contract for a term between July 1st, 2025 and June 30th. It's a little bit late, but we're going to get that done. So Enforcement update, the board received 686 consumer complaints and 257 criminal convictions. 680 cases were closed and 37 were referred to the Attorney General's office. And currently, the average number of days to complete formal discipline is 464 days. Average number of days cases at the Attorney General's office is 342. And the average number of days to complete a board investigation, that's staff completing an in-house investigation, is 55 days. And we did not receive any petitions for modification or early termination this last quarter. We're not sure what happened there, but people are taking vacations and just not paying attention. So I'm assuming that number will go up. On social media engagement, our followers, we still increase in Facebook and Instagram. And I think this time, this quarter, our reach had increased over the third quarter. We participated in 17 outreach events, and that brings the total to 52 outreach events this year. And the BREEZE system updates, I know everyone wants to know about this. Unfortunately, I can't give you great news, but we are still working on putting the registration applications online. The complications, we've been going through validation processing, which means we are looking at the system and how it's been created. So the system is there and it's ready to go, but we need to make sure that when we move over to the new system or the new organization in our system, that all the data is going to transfer appropriately, because we don't want to lose that. So we are currently going through that validation process. Once that validation process is done and we're good to go, we will push it out. And then following after that should be pretty soon. After that would be the ASW applications and the APCC applications. Concurrently with doing this validation for the data, we are also working on making sure that the system is ready and retooled for those registration types. So it should be ready to go, and it should be a quicker process. So communication, the CIC Consumer Information Center, CIC, handled 3,378 calls for us, and the board staff received approximately 30,000 emails last quarter, the fourth quarter. So, and then the strategic plan updates there for your review, and I will open it up for questions if that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for that update. Under F of your report, Education and Outreach Report, I think I made a request the last time that we are in sync. Is that the same as the outreach and education versus the education and outreach?
We will have to get that.
Just a little tweak. Thank you.
No, yeah, we actually started, we were like, wait a minute, we noticed that too. So
yeah, thank you so much.
And it's outreach and education, I think is, yeah.
Steve, I have a couple questions. Maybe first, I will say I have maybe kind of a brief comment that I thought was worth sharing, but my partner went in through the registration process for her ACSW back in March. So it was really interesting to kind of get a real time feel for it. And I will say the communication through email was excellent, because there were some issues with getting her transcript and some difficulties with the university. By phone, I was a little disappointed. That was really poor in terms of response. I think it was 5 to 6 days before we got phone calls back, if you could even reach somebody. But in terms of email, I would say within 24 hours they were responsive. So I thought that was just worth kind of mentioning that was great. But a couple questions I have. One is in terms of outreach, I know this has come up many times in terms of how we're engaging with license holders and registrants. And one of the things that I'm curious about is if there's been any thought to how we can better reach those that at the point of registration or licensing renewal, particularly since we have Breezy. So an example would be maybe there's an auto enroll into email or something like that, something that we can capture them at that point in time. Because I'm just looking at pretty much all of our outreach efforts, when we're looking at the percentages of people that actually participate in anything, is super low, right? I mean, we're looking at like less than 10% of our total holders. So I'm just thinking, what if there's other ways that we can try to utilize technology and the resources we have to try to capture those and increase our rates with that. That's just one thought. The other question I have is what, in terms of supervisors, I know we're capturing certifications and stuff like that, but what thoughts have been given to identifying supervisors that are currently registered and have met the requirements of supervision for others to know? So for example, if I'm an associate and I were to go seek out a supervisor, how would I actually know if they've met the requirements to be a supervisor? There's no place for me to see that anywhere. I just have to take their word, right? So I think there needs to be some thought to how can we publicly display supervisors that have met the requirements, perhaps on the BBS or DCA website underneath their license, something like that, so that it's clear for anybody to know, and public too, right? That this person's a supervisor. And related to that is what's the rate of audits for supervisors that are currently registered, particularly as we've increased CEUs for supervisors to give them credit. How are we verifying supervisors are actually meeting the requirements to be an eligible supervisor?
So yeah, currently, like with the certification, it is a self-attestation that they do meet the requirements, and we really have not done auditing in that process. I know it's something that we want to kind of pursue and to look at. So definitely looking at that. So as for the registration, in the BREEZE system, we should probably put in a ticket. We probably can have, if they do have the registration, or if they do provide that certification, there's what we call modifier in the system. There probably is a way where we could actually show on the BREEZE system that they are a supervisor. So we could definitely look at that. The other part we've always we talked about in the past was, presenting a list of supervisors, but and maybe that's something we can, I don't know what committee that would be, outreach and education or something, but, and then, speaking to utilizing, how do we actually engage more and such, and you're on that committee too. So, so you will be talking more about that. No, but I think with what I've appreciated with having the outreach and education committee, staff, and I think they can all confirm that we talk consistently about what are the ways and trying to reach out, definitely with the registrant population and stuff. Some of the things we've done currently is we're looking at a little more education, trying to involve schools more and asking us to present to their graduating class, or if people are coming into the class, the law and ethics, or how to actually apply for a licensure. As you see, it's 52 outreach engagements that we had. I would love to have more of that. So in the meantime, we also have been looking at, which it'll get into the conversation with outreach and education, looking at how can we utilize videotaping some of these outreach and just getting it out there on our social media so they can watch. So there's a lot of ideas, and we do have the technology is really, I think we can really lean on it to, it will make it less resource heavy. We want to be out there with, it'd be great if we could go to every school. Like we've talked before, research limitations, but looking at utilizing the technology for that. And for the phone calls, we are actually currently working with CIC to see how they can assist a little bit differently and possibly, assist us with getting more immediate contact with those phone numbers or phone calls. But yeah, I appreciate that for feedback. Well, thank you.
I'm curious, what efforts do we have to let the licensed people know of incentives for being a supervisor? So that would.
I think we've talked. My idea, I think, for outreach and education, it's that's another thing that we're probably going to talk about is how do we actually do. I think it's actually on one of our our goals or what we're looking at is how to reach out to supervisors more or to licensees about supervision. And not only just, maybe the benefits of supervision, but I don't want to say best practices, but, giving them more tools that they can use so it's not as scary to enter in to be a supervisor. So offering that out there so they can have a comfort level of saying, oh, maybe I can do this. So
Maybe at some of our conferences that are put on, we could have some pamphlet or something to.
well, I know at the conferences, we always try to sell it if we're ever able to attend the conferences and when we have a table there, definitely always trying to sell that. It's like, it's a great opportunity. It's a learning process for the licensee as well as for the supervisee. So. I knew I wouldn't give.
Hey, Steve, how's it going?
Hey, John, how you doing today?
Hey, just a couple of questions. One of them, we're looking at exam stats in general, but over the last few years, we've also looked at the use of voluntary collection of demographic information. And I'm wondering how that's been rolling out, what kind of demographic information we're actually starting to gather, and if that's being collated in any type of report at this point.
We currently are not really pursuing the demographic information. It's, yeah.
I just have a concern about that because that was a way that we had talked about a few years ago about us being more responsive to the needs of our populations because we knew because of state rules, we can't mandate it. But the lean was we'll be gathering voluntary information and then over time we'll have something. So I have a concern that we, for a few years now, have been having voluntary information gathering, but we don't have any report or any information about what's being done with that.
Well, so there is voluntary demographic information, but it's done on a healthcare access and information HCI level, and that's done at renewal. So
Right.
yeah, and I will have to admit, they do have some reports that have come out, which I think I have been amiss in showing the board, which I definitely will, I think, and start including those because they just did actually, I would recommend going to HCI and seeing some of the information they have, but they just did another release and they have some really good information. So I will take the blame for not, presenting to the
No,
board. So
no blame, no blame.
Well, but I think it's something that is definitely, especially for the workforce development group, seeing what they're doing. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because our thing was we just were seeing that the voluntary as a way to be able to gather information. We have limitations with from the state gathering. Also, consider the idea that we want to do this new rollout of Breeze with the apps being able to register. Is there also a plan on there to make sure that we're getting the information out that that's the way we want people to go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, we're kind of doing that in all aspects too, not just for the registration applications, but we also have been considering, we currently have address changes, name changes, and also certifications. And those are, currently we're doing paper applications, and you can see in there, I do the online and the manual processing, and we're looking at just switching over to saying, we're only accepting these electronically. Our hesitancy has been kind of the accessibility, but we're seeing other boards do that. The same thing is just going straight to, you have to apply for these applications online. So I think we've always taken a really cautious stance of not, limiting the accessibility, but I think we really want to proceed down that because it does free up a lot of time for resources.
And then one final thing, I just want to go on record in saying that I'm concerned that we signed a new 5-year contract with ASWB when I feel that the concerns we've been trying to address with them over the test itself have not been adequately responded to, and that we've now said, hey, we're with you for another 5 years. And a lot of the stuff that we were requesting and had a lot of meetings about discussing changes that we said were really important to us have actually not been addressed. So I just want to go on record saying I have a concern that we signed another 5-year contract with them.
Okay. And honestly, that's another thing because the ASWB is doing a lot of work in the background and probably I've been amiss. It might actually, help you to be more have a better idea or a better, comfortability with us still in this contract. So they are doing a lot of work.
So far in our board interactions with them, they have not been forthcoming and they have been very unresponsive, even when we've been talking with them in person. So I'm just saying I have a concern that we went ahead and signed a 5-year contract with them with all of these concerns still in the air.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other comments from the board, we'll go to the audience. Morning, Ben.
Good morning. Ben Caldwell, MFT, also regarding the exam.
That's true.
It is a fundamental principle of fairness in testing that examinees have a right to know what they're going to be tested on and how they're going to be tested. The ASWB clinical exam format changes that you talked about were not pre-tested for measurement equivalency, as industry standards require. ASWB actively misinformed examinees about those even up to 2 weeks after the changes had taken effect. And ASWB now seems to be shrugging it off with, we don't think there'll be a problem, but we'll let you know. Related to the MFT exams, it was 10 years ago now, in 2015, as you were preparing to launch the current exam process, that I first brought to the board the question of which code of ethics, AMFTs or camps, MFTs are going to be tested on. For 10 years now, MFTs have been left to guess. I've raised this here time and again, and several times, including in March of 2024. I was told that a solution was coming soon. You saw in the survey data yesterday that examinees feel like the exam process is unfair. This is why. Examinees have a basic right to know what they're going to be tested on and how they're going to be tested. When that right is clearly and openly violated, nothing happens. I'm genuinely grateful for the thoughtful process that this board and staff takes for most issues, including those on today's agenda. The high stakes exams that you use to determine who gets into the door of licensure deserve that same attention and responsiveness. Thank you.
On a slightly different note, but related to exams. Hi, everyone. Leah Brew, LPCC and counselor educator. I noticed that the LMFT Law and Ethics exam pass rate was only 58% for first-time test takers. And typically those run in the upper 60s to lower 70s. I have to track them for my accreditation, so I just wonder if you know what went wrong on that exam cycle, or?
My assumptions, and I have not looked into this yet, but that percentage pass rate could be affected from out-of-state individuals taking the law and ethics exam, and I'm thinking upon investigation we might see that. I think that's where it may have occurred, but I don't know yet.
Yeah. So my own group of students, the N is low. There are like very few people took it, but we still only passed at 60%, which is, I mean, usually we're at 85 to 100%. So like I was shocked it wasn't the normal 85 to 100% for my students. Then I looked at the average and I'm like, whoa, 58. So that might be part of it. I wonder if there's something else going on.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
She's looking at law and ethics.
Hi, Kathy Atkins with CAMP. I wanted to circle back on a couple of things just to underscore Ben Caldwell's comments about exams. We do continue to get calls from members asking CAMP about which ethics, CAMP or AMPT, and we do struggle to give an answer. We would love to get guidance. I'm not quite sure if it comes from UBS or DCA or OPS, but we would love guidance because we don't have great answers. Also, as an aside, both CAMPT and AMPT are in the process of redoing their ethics. And so I don't know if that complicates this even more, but I did want the board and BBS to be aware that both are changing. So that adds like a little bit of a wrinkle to what we're talking about. But we would love guidance and underscore Ben's question to the BBS. And CAMP is here and would love to help in any way possible. If something we could do, and I'm sure AMPT would feel the same way, if there's something we as the organizations could do to help in this issue. With the law and ethics question that was just brought up, if the BBS does have any data that they find, we would love to hear it as well, because that better CAMP can better prepare our members, as well as I know the testing organizations would love to hear that as well. As an aside, a couple issues that came up related to supervisors or BREEs. I just encourage the BBS to utilize the organizations like NSAW or CalPEC or CAMP to get out information. We serve lots and lots of members between all the different organizations. The educational psychologists, we would love to help in any way to disseminate and or obtain information for you all. So please look at us all. And I don't want to speak for the other organizations, but I assume they agree. We would love to be a resource. Lastly, on the diversity demographic information, I encourage the group to look at the HCI. Shanti loves reading the weeds. So I could talk to Shanti and see if there's any information he has that could be helpful if Steve or Roseanne wanted to reach out. As well as we do a pretty large demographic survey to our membership. It's not, super scientific. Ben would probably cringe at our survey data, but it's better than nothing. And we do have 39,000 members. So we capture a decent amount. Again, it's voluntary, as Steve noted. So that is a dilemma, but at least it's something. So there's some strange legal guardrails on providing it. So I have to look into that, but I'm happy to provide anything. Thank you.
Hi, Leah Brew. Just based on what Kathy was saying, the ACA is also changing their ethical codes, just so you know, that are supposed to be out in the next few years. Thanks.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah, we can hear. Okay. Good morning, Dr. Jasmine Smith from the NASW California chapter. We thank Ben Caldwell for the remarks, as well as Kathy from CAMP. We do agree that there are some concerns with the ASWB in regards to the racial bias, in regards to specifically the low pass rates for Black test takers, for individuals where English is not their first language, individuals of older populations. We also agree regarding the lack of transparency regarding the knowledge assessed and the validity of the exams. We would love to support and continue to have conversations about that, while we understand that there have been some efforts to work on issues related to the exam. One of the things that the ASWB noted was free resources regarding the exam, which kind of points it as if it's an issue of not testing well or not having enough information or knowledge, and not actually addressing the way that the questions are framed. And the information that's not available regarding the actual exam. So we would like to address those things and making sure that there is culturally responsiveness in regards to this exam. And I would also like to note that we do have Bindu Madavi, who is part of our policy manager, who would like to support those conversations and address these issues more effectively. Thank you.
No other comments? Do we have any comments from the board? Okay, Steve, any closing comments on this, or you good?
Thank you for all of you. I appreciate the feedback, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 16, Department of Consumer Affairs update. Do we have? Oh, turn that over to you.
I'm going to be reading this out directly. So the governor's reorganization plan in January, Governor Newsom released his proposed 25-26 state budget, which included the proposal to split DCA's oversight agency, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, into two state agencies. the California Housing and Homelessness Agency, and the Business and Consumer Service Agency. After public hearing and review by the Little Hoover Commission and the legislature, I am pleased to share that the governor's reorganization plan was enacted on July 5th. Again, the new Business and Consumer Service Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing, and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs will be among the 8 departments in this new agency. 2 new agencies will officially become operative on July 1st, 2026. DCA is participating in multi-agency work groups on the logistics required by for the transition to the new agency and will continue to keep the board and bureau leadership appraised throughout the year. And their update on the hybrid telework transition. On March 3rd, 2025, Governor Newsom issued an executive order requiring all state agencies and departments to update their hybrid telework policies for employees and increase from 2 to 4 business days in office per week beginning July 1st, 2025. At the end of June, agreements with several labor unions representing employees with the Department of Consumer Affairs were released, delaying the 4-day in-office requirement by 1 year for almost all employees. And we appreciate, DCA appreciates staff's flexibility as the situation evolves. Travel updates. On June 9th, 2025, the Department of Finance issued guidance for out-of-state travel in the upcoming fiscal year. Travel outside of California will be limited to essential travel that is required to conduct state business, meaning requests should only be made for mission-critical needs. DCA distributed a memo to all boards and bureaus on June 16th, 2025, detailing the criteria for mission-critical travel, including but not limited to enforcement actions, revenue collection, statutory requirements, auditing, and litigation. Additionally, all requests must be provided to DCA's budget office 8 weeks in advance to allow for review by DCA. We would also like to remind board members and staff of our collective responsibility to always work to minimize the costs to the state through responsible travel planning and scheduling. To best serve the public, it's incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we are being fiscally prudent in our decisions, especially when traveling for board business. DCA is reminding members and staff to evaluate if a rental car is always necessary versus ride-sharing services. Carpooling is highly encouraged when renting vehicles. We know that there may be new travel costs board members are experiencing as well, such as baggage charges. So please keep receipts to ensure that you can be reimbursed. If you have any questions, you can reach out to member relations at dca.ca.gov so we may assist you, or you can ask staff, board staff. Finally, the annual report is one of DCA's biggest projects. Staff work on this report throughout the year, gathering information and statistical data in order to compile a comprehensive report about the department's actions to submit to the legislature. On behalf of the director, thank you to all the board staff for your efforts and contributions. Published to the DCA website this summer, the annual report has a wealth of information and memorializes all the great work done by so many throughout the department. DCA encourages board members to take time to review it and use it as a resource. In closing, I guess, thank you for the opportunity for letting me join today. Well, I'm supposed to be here anyway. Happy to answer any questions. If you have travel questions, we'll have to talk later. But so that is the DCA report.
Okay, do we have any questions from board members? Seeing none, do we have any questions from the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 17, discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to accept the Association of Marital and Family Therapy Regulatory Board's Marital and Family Therapy National Examination as the clinical exam for the California licensure as a marriage and family therapist. Steve, we'll turn this back to you.
Excuse me as I make my way through this. My mouth is a little dry, so I'll be stumbling over a bunch, but here we go. Oh, did you?
I'm going to pass out. We received an additional meeting material related to this item. I'll pass out copies. Some of you have them already. If you don't have one, please take a copy. They've also been distributed to the audience, and there are a couple of extra copies at the table outside, and we will be posting next week these as additional meeting materials.
Thank you. So currently, as you know, the board does not participate in the Association of Marital and Family Therapists Regulatory Board National Exam, the AMFTRB National Exam. We're the only state that does not. Adopting the AMFT National Exam kind of aligns with one of our strategic plan objectives was to look at that and to look at possible adoption of the AMFTRB exam. What does that mean, and what are the benefits? The national exam would increase license portability for California MFTs. It could actually reduce administrative barriers for licensees and actually some of the administrative demands on the board. And I believe it still offers strong consumer protection. So we've been talking about this for a while. I think we began the conversation November 22. And in September of 2024, the board approved amendments that would authorize the adoption of a national exam. And the statutory amendment is now pending in legislature, and if successful, will become effective January 1st, 2026. Subsequently, in the February 2025 meeting, the board directed staff to draft the initial rulemaking documents to designate AMFTRB National Exam as the national exam. And once identified acceptance criteria were met, bring the proposal back to the board. And for the criteria that we're looking at, the acceptance criteria status of each are as follows. We're looking at the first criteria was collaborate with AMFTRB. Mic check. There we go. Collaborate with AMFTRB on addressing examination content and measurement scopes. Just a preface before this, we've been in conversation with AMFTRB over the last year and been consulting with them and collaborating, kind of exploring the possible acceptance of the exam and what this means, and looking at what kind of work they're currently doing with the future goal of seeing California adopt the national exam. So for the content area, back in November, Office of Professional Examination Service, November 2022, the Office of Professional Examination Services reviewed the national exam, and they presented their findings. And they determined that the AMFTRB national exam measures broad competency, while California's LMFT clinical exam focuses on competency specific to the practice within the state. It's a very generalized review, but that's what we came up with. Since then, we've been talking about that and with AMFTRB, and AMFTRB just completed a job task analysis, their JTA, and they had substantial input from California LMFTs. Thank you, Camp, for getting that word out there. And this actually, having the involvement of the LMFTs in this job task analysis will help align the exam content with current California practice. Additionally, AMFT has noted that the national trends are increasingly aligning with California practices, and they expect this to influence the changes both with content and measurement scope in the future exams that they're going to be publishing, which would, I believe, begins after the job task analysis. They do item creation. I believe they're looking at a January 1st, 2026 date with a new exam. In addition, the other thing that we have been talking about to kind of address the content and measurement scope is looking at sharing our current data bank that we have for our LMFT clinical exam with AMFTRB. So these will be questions that California has designed themselves, have tested, and adding these if we share our data bank, our item bank, this will help to kind of it'll help to, I guess, I hate to say the word sway, but I mean, it will help to affect what the test will look like with more. It should include more California content. Additionally, the sharing of the item bank will assist with the possibility of, when we're talking about later the accessibility of the exam, it would help the AMF-TRB to be able to offer this exam more consistently, other than the 1 week that they do out of every month currently. And that is the segue into the next item that we had talked about, which was collaborate with AMF-TRB on addressing accessibility for testing candidates to assure candidates are not adversely affected to the transition through the transition. And like I said, currently the AMF-TRB exam is offered 1 week per month, but they are actively exploring ways, AMF-TRB is actively exploring ways to increase the both frequency and capacity to meet the needs of California should we participate in the exam. And they are currently in process, or they're currently in collaboration with their administrator, which is Prometric, in looking at the feasibility of that. Additionally, we were looking at working with OIS to ensure Office of Information Services, which is the DCA, computer gurus, let's say. I'll just put them at that. So to ensure that we have like an automated system in place, and so that we'd be able to transfer scores and accept scores back from them. So I did put in here, so that really DCA, we have to make, before we really start working on the system, we'll have to have some sort of commitment that we would be moving over to AMF-TRB. So really that function can't really start until once the board, if they do accept the AMF-TRB exam, then we can begin that process. The last one was pursue the statute amendments necessary to accept the AMF-TRB national exam. We've done the statutes, so we can do a national exam, and now we are asking for the vote for the actual regulatory language. So I'm looking at, full implementation for this exam could take up to 12 to 18 months after the regulatory language is, once we get a approval to pursue the regulatory language. There's substantive work that needs to be done, not only with computer, but with looking at, making sure that AMF-TRB, the content and measurements, we're good with that. And then also the accessibility. And some of those key implementation activities would include, the first thing is completing the rulemaking process, ensuring system readiness for the transfer of the exams and eligibility scores. And then the big thing, another thing, is really collaborating with stakeholders to make sure that we have that clear administrative process and everyone understands the new process and how that's going to affect them. So if the language is approved, staff will coordinate with AMF-TRB on implementation, and we'll definitely report the progress of that collaboration over the next board meetings. And the proposal that is in front of you today, the regulatory proposal would permit the board administer examination, would permit AMF-TRB, let me read it. The proposal would permit the use of the board administered examination, the one we currently have, the LMFT clinical exam, until December 31st, 2026. And this would allow the board and affected stakeholders sufficient time to transition to the AMF-TRB exam effective January 2027. So what we are asking for, we are recommending that the board adopt the proposed regulatory amendments that will formally designate the AMF-TRB national exam as the LMFT clinical exam required for LMFT licensure in California on or after January 1st, 2027. I do have on the line Lois Bergen, from Executive Director of the AMF-TRB, and Lois, can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I'm here.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Good.
I can hear you, Lois. Lois, would you like to say a few words?
I've been listening for the last 45 minutes first, so thank you for inviting me. And it's been good to hear some of your other commentary, which aligns very much. The ethics discussion was very good to hear because that's something we're also trying to get clear. And I would say that AAMFT, excuse me, is also working on their ethics revision. So it's very timely to have this come up and know that that is important to you as well. Uh, Everything that Steve has already said to you is true, that we are waiting sort of for the final vote to jump into meeting with people, hopefully in person, to start some of these transitions around um, the most effective process for guaranteeing that the content and measurements align, and for the accessibility issues, both the actual physical being able to take the exam as well as accessibility for the entire state of California.
Great, thank you. And I had Lois join us too,
Yes.
because there's probably going to be questions. Additionally, I just kind of, and hopefully I'm correct on this, with the adoption or with this motion, it does put us the ability to kind of pursue the regulatory language. That has to go through the regulatory process, which we still have. I'm not sure how to put it correctly, but we can, if there is concerns raised, we can definitely address that in future discussions when we look at approving the regulatory language further. So it's a first step in starting the process, but it's not, full jumping in yet. If that's a bad way to present it, but I think hopefully that makes sense. So,
Yes.
okay.
Have any questions from board members? Oh,
I do have a question.
all right. Any comments?
I have a question real
Oh,
quick. I'm
sorry.
sorry. So I think one of the questions I have, and maybe it's more of a concern, but the accessibility aspect of it, I mean, that's a pretty significant deviation from what we're currently offering. And I recognize that there has to be approval before that can be fully explored. However, what is going to be the frequency of contact with the board to ensure there's not going to be any disruption to the implementation? Because my understanding or my assumption would be that there also has to be an agreement with the administrator for their ability to even know if they have the capacity to do that. So it seems a little backwards to me that we're approving something without fully understanding what the consequences are going to be, or if they have the ability to actually meet the needs of our state. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. If it got to the point when we would be working with AMFTRB over the next, if this goes into place over the next year or more, and it comes to a point where we're really concerned about the accessibility and such, we could then look at the regulation and either extend it out or, not approve that regulation. So.
Right, and just because if you approve language today doesn't mean this is the last time you see it. You're going to see it plenty other times, and there's a lot of opportunity for change.
Okay. All right.
Justin Huff to LMFT. I will revisit some of the concerns we've had in the past around transparency, particularly around pass rates and racial disparities in pass rates. But I also have concerns about what exam vendors will be used and whether these can be implemented in California in ways that we still have reasonable oversight over and that they still can be flexibly meeting our needs. And I will also bring up concerns which have been discussed before around the extent to which exam content will be updated and how much of a say we have in this content. I think the board has very clearly stated we are interested in a national exam, and we have been met with, and maybe this is overly simplifying the issue, we have been met with, let's continue moving forward, and as we move forward, we'll get more data. But we have yet to actually get that data. I understand this signals to to the national exam, like we're interested. So now give us what we're asking for, but we have yet to receive, I think, some of the things that we have requested.
Any other board members? Questions? Dr.
Yeah,
Walker?
Dr. Walker, public board member. Yeah, I'm kind of reacting to what I've heard by the other colleague board members say as well. And I too am thinking about the reassurances for our consumers. We are moving into this, and I came into this conversation 4 years ago. And I believe I asked the question maybe a couple of years back, like, how long have we been having this conversation? How long has this been out there? It's been a while. So it's great to see some forward motion, some progress. I understand where we are. I appreciate where we are, especially with the collaboration of stakeholders. But as a public member, consumer safety is paramount for me. So as you know, I refer to the memo, which I think is worth reiterating, that we're entering into this possibility, if you will, because it stands or serves to reduce administrative barriers for licensees and alleviate administrative demands on the board, in addition to preserving strong consumer protections. Okay, to me, it's strong language, but it's also very vague. It's like, what does that mean to the consumer? How is that protecting them moving forward and getting their needs met? Were their voices involved in this process over the years? And I think we're talking about 30 years, maybe exaggerate, but yeah, it's been that long. So where are their voices in this? Again, I'm new to the conversation, happy to be here. But I too am looking for the reassurances that we're getting, what the board has asked for as far as the barriers and obstacles that have been in the way, obviously, if nothing has happened in 27, 30 years. There must be some strong cause there. And I'm all for California doing the best thing for our consumers. But are we doing that? I mean, I don't know how much they've been involved in the conversation. If I'm making any sense, just as a public board member, I'm looking at both sides of the equation here. So again, I'm not asking you to respond to my comments, but if there is information of this conversation that can be shared with the public, is it on the website? Where is it? Can it be put out on social media? Let's inform, let's be more transparent about this conversation, long-standing conversation, so that the public and our consumers really understand where we are and why we're at the table at this time. It's like, why now? After all these years, why now? So just, and again, I'm being reactive here, so I appreciate the time, Wendy. Thank you.
Okay, Susan.
I think what Dr. Walker is saying is if you could review for us what is very specific to California that is not specific to the national exam. And if you could just delineate that for us right now, it would be helpful.
Actually, Dr. Walker isn't saying that because they just said I don't expect him to respond right now. I just agree with Member Huft and Dr. Boyd that we want reassurances, and also Dr. Sovak. Not yet, but maybe. I'm working on you. But we want our reassurances, we want transparency, we want our questions answered. We're ready here and willing to do the work and be collaborative with our stakeholders, but it should be a two-way street. You know, we know what you want. We've made our request, and have we received our responses yet? I think that's fair. Yeah, that's what Dr. Walker is saying.
Revised. Dr. Walker is not asking for immediate.
Mr. Sovik.
John Sovik, LMFT. And along the same lines, one thing when I was looking through the memo, we did have that report from OPES in November of 2022. And we did express some very specific concerns that we wanted addressed and we wanted answers about. I'm curious, has information come back with those specific series of questions we came up in that closed session? Is it information maybe that has not been transferred to the board? So we're talking a little bit blind here. But we have not had, and once again, November 22, we were really specific with what our big concerns were. We delineated them, we put them on a list, we handed them off to staff, and I don't feel that we have actually heard any responses as of August 22nd, 2025.
Yeah, you haven't, I think, heard specific responses. I mean, that's what I'm, yeah. So, but that is something we can provide. Yeah, I know, and I know what you're gonna say.
Thank you, Steve. And the question would be
When?
November 22nd.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, November 2022, now August 2025. It's a long time for us to receive some of these answers back, specifically answered, not generically answered.
Okay.
And one of my concerns about this whole process we're going through is we keep being told we're doing these things to prepare for it. We're skipping down this path. We're giving staff, the board, lots of freedom to move with this. And we keep getting told, and there's always going to be a point where you can stop it later on. But how much energy are we putting into this, going down this pathway without having all of this information available to us, or at least 30% of it, just some of it would help us a lot.
Okay. No, all right.
And, Steve, if it might be possible at our November board meeting to look at having like a more, perhaps another closed session discussion, that comes back and really digs deep into the questions that this board has asked before, perhaps has AMFT here to address some questions, or AMFTRB.
Yeah, AMFTRB.
And have them here to, provide responses. Maybe it's time to have another deep dive into that, so that if we know we make this decision today to continue along this path, that we know we kind of have a defined point in time when we're going to have this more substantive conversation.
Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Huft.
Thank you. Am I remembering correctly that AMFTRB gave us information in closed session about exam rates that we were not able to share?
No, not yet. We offered those up. No, I'm like, okay. But we can. Maybe that's one of the things for November.
Did they give us?
Okay. Well, because
Something
there's,
closed session?
either way, there still appears to be questions that are unanswered. At least board members are feeling like they're unanswered questions. So whatever those questions may be.
Try to bring it back in November.
And then we can definitely bring their annual report back in November, so you can see.
So just a quick follow-up, because I think that's a great recommendation by our board chair, to bring it back for further discussion at a November meeting. So if we were to move this forward today, is this a motion that we're making, Sylvia?
It is, and it's just to basically say, yes, we would like to move forward with this regulatory packet. It doesn't put anything into law today or by November. It's just saying, we would like to start the process. So you're not, you can always rescind the package later also, but you also don't have to take motion. You don't have to take action today if you're uncomfortable.
Okay. I just thank you for the clarity. Because it's like someone's putting the cart before the horse. Do we get our questions answered at our next meeting? Or, I mean, you're right. You guys understand what's happening. Okay.
I mean, could we, well, so two questions. One is, is there an opportunity, or what's the impact of a delay of taking this action to November till after we are able to have that conversation? And then the other question to kind of provide assurances to board members is, if we take this action today, like if we need to do this today, that we have a concurrent, an item on the agenda in November after the closed session that would allow us to an agendized item that would allow us to reconsider that action if the discussion on November isn't fruitful.
Well, I mean, I think if that was the case, yeah, we could, I think we just rather if you want to wait, I think recommend just waiting then, to not really make a recommendation or do anything right now. And then we can discuss that in November and then bring it back. Yeah.
And Wendy, for the record, I do want to note for our stakeholders that everyone out there that we are aware of the timeline moving forward if we were to start the regulatory process. So we do understand that as board members, we do that, but we're talking about a few months here. So I don't think it will push back too much, right?
I would also recommend your regulations counsel's online, Christy, and I think she'd be a nice person to hear from just on this procedure.
Wonderful.
I think she's still on.
I can't speak. Can you hear me?
Oh, there. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I've been trying to talk, but I can't. So this is Chrissy Shield, Regulations Counsel for the board. So one of the considerations is timing. The text before you today has a January 1, 2027 implementation date because it takes about a year for a regulation to become effective and to give your staff time to implement. The January 1, 2027 date was selected. So the question would be whether you're comfortable with that timeline or you want to change it, given the fact that you're going to be taking more information at your November board meeting. So that would be, excuse me, a question for you to determine whether the timeframes that are set forth in attachment A work for you. Thank you.
So if you're fine with that delay, like Christy was saying, that's okay.
Thank you, Christy. But I'm not sure if my question was answered. If we, for the lack of better words, table this until November, would it, and we approve it then, would it push that time, would it change the timeline that's in front of us today?
It could.
Oh,
It kind of depends. If we get comments on the regulation, that'll have to be brought to the board. It has to wait generally till the next board meeting. The other potential, and maybe Christy could speak to this, with the reorganization of our oversight agency splitting into two, they do have to review regulations. Usually it takes 30 days, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen there. Maybe it could take longer because they're, just getting going, at that point. So just putting that out there, there is a potential.
Okay, I see, Member Huff, just one follow-up comment to that. In this process, I think it's important, whatever we do, get the word out, social media, website, more so than the website. I think our consumers are not, they know the website is there, but they're on social media, Instagrams, Facebook and all that. Get the word out that we're having this conversation so that they can have their voices heard. Let's get these, hopefully, if we put the information out there, we'll have more voices in the room, on the table on this discussion. Let's just give it one more opportunity because again, I don't know where their voices have been in this conversation over the last 30 years.
All right.
Let alone the last 3.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Thank you. I'm good. Member Huff.
Justin Huff, I just want to circle back to Board Member Sobek's comments and trying to pull together some of the comments on the board. In February 2024, we were given a packet that we are not able to share with the public, which has a number of concerns that the public stakeholders would be interested in knowing about. And we have raised a number of concerns publicly as the board. And in this November meeting, I am hoping that we can have clear, direct answers that address each one of these concerns that were raised in that February packet. Because they directly point to things that board members and stakeholders have addressed that have so far been unaddressed. And until many of these concerns that were raised are adequately and transparently spoken to, I don't know if we can meaningfully move forward.
Okay. Do we have, do we need a motion before we go to public comment? Do we have a motion ready right now, or maybe we will
Hi, this
go
is Christy
to
Shields,
public comment?
Regulations Council. I would recommend, if the board is comfortable allowing the staff to begin preparation after enactment, or whether the board would like to wait till after the November board meeting. So it depends on what your preference is. If you would like to authorize the staff to begin preparation of a rulemaking package before the November board meeting, then the motion in the meeting materials is after where the action requested is. It has the two options there for either accepting the staff recommendation and essentially targeting January 1, 2027 as the implementation date. Now, as Ms. Knight indicated, you could move that motion today, and then, when we begin the rulemaking process, you could always change that date during the course of the process. So it's not like if you move that today, it's set in stone, as she indicated. You could always amend it, after public comment or before public comment. It really would be up to this board. So I'm just trying to get a feel for what your comfort level is, but that is one way to address this item.
Looking around for board preference, do we want to hear some public comment before a motion's made? Would that? Sure. Okay. We'll proceed with comments from members of the audience.
Hi, good morning. Ben Caldwell, MFT. While I have serious concerns about clinical exams generally, on balance, I continue to support this transition. The AMFTRB exam is in some ways a step up from our California exam in terms of the demographic data collected and the opportunity to even check for potential bias. Some of the concerns raised about what's potentially different between California and the rest of the country, those are valid concerns, but I don't think we should inconsistently apply them in a context where we are using national exams for social workers and counselors. I do continue to encourage the board to use its leverage throughout this process to ensure that AMFTRB lives up to testing industry standards, publishes publicly pass rate data disaggregated by various demographic factors, and assesses its own exams for both differential item functioning and differential test functioning. But I believe it's appropriate to move this language forward on whatever timeline you prefer, knowing that you do still have plenty of opportunity to pump the brakes if it becomes necessary. Thank you.
Hi, my notes are really messy, so bear with me here. I wanted to thank the board for bringing this forward today. Not surprisingly, CAMP strongly supports and asks that you all vote to move it forward today. The California is an outlier to the 49 other states and territories, and we continue to see this harm our California-specific MFTs. The California MFTs are being harmed in both license portability and their inability compared to all 49 other states, as well as job access in federal agencies. For example, I spent an hour with a member yesterday who works. Yesterday, I spent an hour with a member who works for the VA, and we were trying to figure out how she could take the national exam, even though she's licensed here in California, so that she could actually get promoted.
We don't have enough count.
Sorry, I'm getting distracted. That's okay.
Let me
That's
call you
okay.
back
No,
when
no,
it's
that's
over.
okay. No, that's the BBS staff has set this up in a way that I really commend. They have set it up so that you can move forward. You can continue to get data from AMFTRB, and there is data that I certainly hear loud and clear that you want in order to make this a permanent thing moving forward. However, they have set it up so you can stop at any time. Something I was thinking about is if any of you have bought a house, the sellers are not going to let you come inspect the house and look under everything until you've put some money in the game. And so I think there's a little bit, I'm not privy to some of these meetings, but I suspect there's a little bit of, is the board serious about this or not? Before we put a lot of money and time and energy and commitment to change things when the board may or may not be committed. So I suspect there's a little bit of that there. And so in your conversations, I hope you think about that. I do believe, as Ben noted, that exam is imperfect, but California does have standardized exams. We're committed to standardized exams at this time. And I think AMFTRB is a better choice than the California exam. I think AMFTRB has been transparent as they can to researching and improving their exam as to exam bias and other complaints. Ensuring greater access. That is something I've heard from them loud and clear, that they understand the concerns we have as far as access and that they are dedicated to improving them. As I noted, we are absolutely in support of this. We ask that you consider doing it today, recognizing there's a lot you want to hear in November. And if you don't hear it in November, you can always pivot at that time. But we are asking for the 39,000 MFTs that we represent, that you move it forward today. We are committed to helping in any way we can to get information, to disseminate information, to pressure AMFTRB if the board is not getting what they want. We are absolutely at your disposal. And again, we strongly support this transition, and thank you for your time.
Seeing no other public comments, back to the board. Any
I'd like to
interest
make
in
a motion unless we have discussion. I'm going to make a motion that we approve the proposed regulatory text as presented in Attachment A and submit the approved text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the text and the package, and set the matter for a hearing. If requested, after the 45-day public comment period, no adverse comments are received, and no public hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noticed for Title 16 California Code of Regulations Sections 1816.2 and 1829.1.
Justin Huft, second.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Motion? Seeing none. Any comments in the audience on the motion? I just have a quick, sorry. I was just going to have a quick question. Does the motion also include to make sure that we have an item on the November agenda? Do we need to include that? Okay. All right. Thanks. John?
And just before we go to a vote, Chrissy Berger, here in the room, this is going to affect you. If this motion gets approved, this just basically allows you to continue doing your job most effectively rather than having to put all of this aside and leave it stalled out.
Correct, because there's a lot of documents that we have to prepare as part, which I'm sure you've all seen on our website. Initial statement of reasons, sending out the notice. So yeah, there's a lot of work involved. So this does allow us to get started on all the background work.
Okay. And then do we have any, sorry, I don't remember if we went out to public comment. Are there any public comments on the motion? Okay. All right. I think, Rachel, we're ready for a vote.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
motion carries.
Oh, helps if I thought I turned it on. Look at, it's like I'm new. We'll take a quick 10-minute break. We'll come back at 10:41. We're back from our break and we are moving on to item 18. Discussion and possible action. I'll speak slowly as Christy's coming back up. Discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to amend the board's experience requirements for licensed educational psychologists. Christy, once you get settled, would you provide us an overview? Thank you.
All righty. Okay, so as Wendy mentioned, we're discussing potential amendments to the board's regulations that specify experience requirements for licensed educational psychologists and possibly initiating a rulemaking to implement those proposed changes once the statutory amendments are enacted in Senate Bill 775, which is currently pending in the legislature. We had a couple of meetings where the committees discussed potential amendments to both statutes and regulations. And so anyway, the attachment A shows the proposed regulation amendments if SB 775 is enacted. And then attachment B shows what is in that Senate Bill 775. So currently, experience requirements are 60 semester hours of postgraduate work in pupil personnel services, 2 years of full-time or the equivalent as a credentialed school psychologist, and either 1 year of supervised professional experience in an accredited school psychology program or 1 additional year of full-time or equivalent experience as a credentialed school psychologist in the public schools under the direction of an LEP. The pending statutory amendments, we're doing some things to clarify some things, like how do we measure what a year means when we're talking about school years that these types of professions work in. So it's going to clarify that. It's going to also provide a definition of full-time and what equivalent to full-time means, and specifying that the required experience can be no more than 6 years old prior to filing the application of licensure, just for consistency with other professions. And just clarifying some what are these what do we mean when we say 1 year in of experience in an accredited school psychology program, and that we're saying that that's 1,200 hours. And then the last thing, and that's probably the most significant, is that if you have a California credential, it has to be under the direction of an LEP with a California license. And then for in-state versus out-of-state, specifying that if the required 2 terms of experience as a credentialed school psychologist was not gained in California with a California credential in a school located in California, that they need 1 additional school term of experience under someone with a California credential in a California school, and then adding an age limit to the passing score on the LEP exam. And that's for consistency with our other professions as well. So the regulatory amendments we're looking at to Section 1856 will be run after the statutory changes are enacted. And if the board approves it today, we'll get going on that as well. So what we would do is striking some language that would be covered by statute, because we don't need to duplicate statute in the regulations typically. We're going to specify, so the statute says it must be in the public schools or
Another entity as deemed acceptable by the board.
As deemed acceptable by the board. And in current regulation doesn't say what's deemed acceptable. So what we're talking about is private or parochial schools currently we're allowing that, but it's not clear like what's around, what are the, that is currently in the regulations that we may accept from a private or parochial school, but it doesn't really give us enough clarity to do that in a way that ensures people have the experience that's really necessary to be an independent practitioner. So what we would do is clarify under which circumstances experience would be allowed in private schools and parochial schools. We formulated this in consideration of the fact that special education services are often limited for students with disabilities who are parentally placed in a private or parochial school. Under federal law, no child with a disability parentally placed in a private school has an individual right to receive some or all of the special education and related services that the child will receive if enrolled in a public school. So this means that not only may the school psychologist be limited in the duties performed, they are also unlikely to become knowledgeable about the complex laws that govern special education, which is critical for an LEP who practices independently. There are some private or parochial schools that may choose to employ a credentialed school psychologist, so it would be reasonable to allow experience in these settings if the duties performed is comparable to the duties performed in a public school. So what we've done is proposing that we would require certification from the supervisor or other authorized representative of the school, stating under penalty of perjury that the applicant performed the full range of duties of a school psychologist as set forth by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, California. The CTC's regulation specifies the authorized duties of a pupil personnel services school psychology credential, and I've listed the range there, so that's what they would have to attest to in order for us to accept that experience. The next thing that we would do is specify the documentation required for experience gained while employed by a temporary employment agency. This is happening more and more often that credentialed school psychologists are doing some temporary employment agency contract. A lot of times they're limited term, and for the purpose of helping with student assessments. There are some shortages in some areas of school psychologists. We think that's probably why this is happening more often. But sometimes these temporary temp agency positions may cover the full range of duties. So similar to what we would do for private and parochial schools, we would require an attestation that they've completed the full range of duties as set forth by the CTC's regulations. We also in regulations need to specify what the documentation of the experience required to be submitted by applicants. So we added some language that staff believes would be the minimum necessary to verify completion of experience. And just this helps to ensure that the experience meets the requirements of in the law, and it ensures the accuracy and reliability of the information provided to the board. And lastly, we would specify some additional requirements for experience gained under the direction of an LEP. So right now, the regulation states, that 1 year of experience has to be under the direction of, and it doesn't really say what that means. So what we've done is say that means supervision. And what is supervision? And we've kept it more limited than what we've done for the other professions, because while people are gaining this experience, they're in a school setting. There's a structure there that their supervisor is under the school. So it's different than like a private practice. There's a structure in place. Basically the requirements we want to put in there is that the supervisor holds a current, active, and unrestricted California LEP license. It would prohibit the supervisor from having a financial, personal, business, or therapeutic relationship with the supervisee to prevent bias in supervision. And then require the supervisor to be competent in the areas of practice and techniques being supervised, and then would provide a definition of competent to ensure only qualified supervision occurs. So staff recommends that the board review the proposed regulatory text shown in attachment A and consider whether to approve it as written or to suggest changes to the proposed text. And after review and discussion, consider one of the motions provided in the memo.
Thank you, Christy. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? I'm assuming Chris.
I might have a couple of things to say. Christy, first I want to thank you so much for all of the work that you've done in this. It really, the LEP language was quite antiquated. And I know that you've been working really hard on this for the last, what is it, almost 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I'm very happy and comfortable with the the updates and the changes that have been made. I think it's going to increase accountability for LEPs. I think it is going to ensure consumer safety, specifically from people that come from out of state, because to steal a phrase from Kathy Atkins, California is an outlier. We are much, much different than the rest of the nation. I'm from California, born and raised in Burbank. I did my graduate work in Boston and then came back to California and was scratching my head as to what was going on in this state, because it's completely different than all of the. Now, that was a long time ago. California's come into more compliance with federal law. But I think I think these changes are going to make things more clear. I think it's going to create accountability, and I think it'll improve, consumer safety. So I am fully in support of it.
Any other comments from board members? Seeing none. Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I was just wondering for LEPs, I'm not as clear on that one. This supervision's only a year?
The law used to read that there had to. So this is where we're weird, right? We're different than everybody else. We don't really have like our 3,000 hours that we get is done as we're working. So every credentialed school psychologist has their master's degree, has already done close to 2,000 hours of internship work before they can get hired. So the way that the statute reads is you have to do 2 full years. Your third year can either will count your internship year, or you need to be under the direction of an LEP, meaning that there's supposed to be some nebulous LEP that's like signing off on your hours that you did a good job and could do well in private practice. Very, very vague. So this will allow for more accountability from the supervision. I take supervision very seriously. So when I sign off on people's hours, I want to see that they are competent to practice, just like I would treat them just like an intern, even though they may have been working for 10 years. So really differentiating between what is appropriate practice in schools versus in private practice, because until we're licensed, we can't work outside of the schools. So we don't have an opportunity to like an MFT or an LCSW, an associate, to get practical experience in private practice until we're actually licensed. So it creates kind of a barrier. Prior to this language, if you came in to California from another state, you could use your experience, but it didn't require any sort of like California knowledge. And that makes me very, very uncomfortable because we are so unique. So that's why we added in, if you didn't do your stuff in California, you need to spend a year with an LEP learning how to do it. So again, that's just another layer of how, we want to improve consumer safety. So you actually, like, if we stayed with the old language, someone could come in from Nevada after they've worked for 3 years and sit for the exam. Now we're saying, no, you've done your 3 years, but you haven't done any time in California, so we're going to make you do an extra year. So now we're actually making out-of-state people do 4 years of experience prior to being able to sit for the exam. So I'm really. It's been 2 years of 2 years of work. So does that clear things up for you, Eleanor?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Christy. That was a lot of work.
Thank you. Any other comments, Dr. Walker?
I just have to comment, thank you for doing this work. I'm not even an LEP, but I've been in the school setting, so I understand that. And it's so streamlined and so crystal clear that it makes me happy too. It brings me joy that we're bringing this forth. So thank you again for your work on this. So.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other board comments, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion. I would like to do motion number A, that the board approve the proposed regulatory text as presented in attachment A and submit the approved text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the text and the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If after the 45-day public comment period, no adverse comments are received and no public hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all the steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noted for Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 1856.
Second by Dr. Walker.
Thank you. We'll take public comment on this item. Anyone in the audience wish to provide comment? Seeing none. Any other final comments by board members? Seeing none. Rachel, please take the vote.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huff,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Sorry, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item 19, discussion and consideration of comments received on modified text during the 15-day public comment period and proposed responses thereto for the board's rulemaking and adoption of amendments to 16 CCR Section 1811 advertising regulations. And Christy, we're sticking with you.
Thank you. And I know Christy, our Regulations Counsel, is definitely going to want to speak during this, so just so you're aware. So at its September 2024 meeting, the board approved regulatory changes pertaining to advertising regulations, which is in attachment B. It was noticed to the public in March, and the 45-day public comment period ended in April. The board made changes to the proposed regulation as a result of the comments received, and we did the 15-day public comment period. We did receive one written comment during the public comment period for the modified text. We've summarized it in the memo. It's also provided in its entirety in attachment C. And staff's recommended response to the comment is also provided below. The current text of the proposal, that would be the second modified text, is provided in attachment A. So staff recommends the board approve the following proposed response to the comment. So first I'm going to read the comment over. I might summarize it a little more than what's printed here. This is from the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. So they believe that omitting the middle name. So to back up a little bit, the text that we noticed included a requirement for a middle name, first, last, and middle name in any advertising. And so what Kempt is commenting on is that they believe omitting the middle name does not mislead or compromise consumer protection. In many cases, the individual's middle name does not significantly contribute to distinguishing identity or cause an advertisement to be false, misleading, or deceptive, especially since advertising requirements already mandate inclusion of the license or registration number that the public can verify on DCA's website. As such, we kindly ask the BBS to clarify whether the board views the inclusion of an individual's middle name and/or suffix, junior, senior, in any advertisement as an essential component in ensuring the public receives accurate information about a clinician. Our concern is that this requirement may present practical challenges and continue to cause confusion about its implementation and practice for many licensees and registrants. Because advertisements include, but not limited to, signs on a building, email signatures, and social media platforms, CAMP receives many questions from members regarding the practicality of including their middle name, such as on a sign on the building when the advertisement taken as a whole is not false, misleading, or deceptive. They believe the proposed change will require time, cost, and education to implement. Many licensees don't currently have their middle name included in their advertisement, so they would need to, if they wanted to, if we proceeded with having the middle name as a requirement, they would have to either decide to change their advertising, or they would have to make a name change with the courts. And then, so that would increase the burden on providers and critical BBS staffing resources. We would inquire about the potential penalties for individuals who inadvertently omit their middle name and or suffix from advertisements if the rest of their advertisements taken as a whole are not false or misleading, believing that enforcement efforts would impose a significant administrative burden. So the staff is recommending that the board accept this comment and proposes an amendment to subsection A1 to remove the requirement for any middle name and or suffix. We believe upon considering those implications, we agree that consumer protection is not compromised because of, we don't believe it's misleading or deceptive. The inclusion of a middle name or suffix, we agree that it does not significantly enhance the ability to verify the identity, because the primary means of verification remains the license number, which is unique to each licensee and can be easily checked on DCA's website. The system is designed to ensure that consumers can reliably verify a licensee's credentials without the need for additional name components. The board rarely receives questions from the public due to being unable to find a licensee in our system, and they can always contact us for assistance. The board understands that it is common practice for licensees and registrants to only include their first and last names in advertisements, and that there are practical challenges if their name is very long, if their middle name is included. And we recognize if the proposed modified text were enacted, we would have tens of thousands of licensees in violations. We may be overwhelmed with questions and concerns with an administrative burden. However, Christy Shields, our regulations counsel, is here to provide some additional legal considerations on this issue that we hope we'll have a robust discussion about, and maybe a different perspective to think about as well. So I will, I think this would be the good time for Christy to chime in.
Thank you, Christy. So as you've heard, the commenters are asking the board to remove the existing requirement. This is an existing requirement generally for a licensee or registrant to disclose their full name in advertising and replace it with a requirement to disclose only the first and last name. I think this is problematic for the following reasons. The board's authority to regulate speech and advertising is limited by the First Amendment. The California Supreme Court, in the case of Bonnie Moore versus the California State Board of Accountancy, has indicated that state agencies may constitutionally ban only those terms that stand to potentially mislead the public regarding the user's licensee or non-licensee status. The court determined that the unqualified use of terms that are potentially misleading can create confusion to the public's detriment. In contrast, where the terms are used in conjunction with a modifier or modifiers that serve to dispel any possibility of confusion regarding their use, may not be constitutionally enjoined, meaning they would not run afoul of advertising laws like Business and Professions Code, Section 651. So if you look at attachment B of your meeting materials, specifically subsection G, excuse me, the argument for why licensees or registrants should be able to use an alias, which is a nickname or former legal name, in advertising was based upon the fact that the board was still requiring the licensee or registrant to provide their full name as filed with the board in the advertising, which would serve to dispel any possibility of public confusion as to the user's license or registration status with the board. If you only require the use of the actual first and last name in the advertising, then the concern would be that it would not be sufficient to dispel public confusion as to license or registration status of an individual, particularly when they use an alias and therefore potentially could be in violation of Business and Professions Code Section 651. So if the board decides that it wants to accept the staff recommendation to accept the comment and not require the full name, I would recommend that you consider making further edits to subsection G to add a requirement for licensees who use a nickname or former legal name to also list their full name as filed with the board in the same advertisement to dispel public confusion about their license status. I do have suggested language to assist you if the board is interested in addressing that concern. However, this item is currently just to determine whether the board would like to accept or reject this comment from CAMT. So if you agree with staff's recommendation, option one would be the motion to accept the comment. Or if you disagree with the recommendation, another option could be to reject the comment and provide explanation as to why. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will now turn it back over to the chair and Ms. Berger.
Christy, do you have anything you want to add after that?
No, I just, I think, you know, it'd be great for the board to discuss and to, especially to get perspective from the associations and any other audience members on kind of weighing both sides of the issue a little bit. So yeah, we'll leave it to that.
All right, thank you. Board members, do we have any comments or questions before we go out to the public? Okay. Oh, so Ms. Friedman.
This is a little bit off the subject, I think, but I'm just curious, and Roseanne probably can answer this, if any of the legislators have dealt with the question of the online therapy advertising. Because to me, that's much more concerning than this.
Right. Absolutely. But right now we can't talk about that because it's not agendized.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to just we're going to just focus on this one particular subsection that we're looking at, our section in the comments in this regulation.
Okay. Mr. Sovic.
John Sovic, LMFT. So currently, if I'm a consumer on Breeze and I want to look up one of our associate licensees, anybody like that, and I go in there and put in John Sovac rather than John Edward Thomas Sovac, my name will show up and all of my information will be there, which would include John Edward Thomas Sovac, which is my full legal name that's registered. All of that would show up, correct? Correct. Okay. Because I think for me that clarifies why this change in information would actually work potentially fine.
And also, if John Sovic were an extremely common name, and let's say we had 4 John Sovics, so 4 showed up, the advertisement is also required to contain your license number, so the consumer would have that to differentiate which John Sovic it was.
And yet there's only one.
Thank goodness.
It's no problem.
Just kidding. The world needs more John Sovic. All right. Should we go to any other board comments before we hear from public? Okay. Turn to members of the audience if they have any comments.
Hi, Kathy Is this on? Yeah. Kathy Atkins from CAMT. We laid out our thoughts and analysis for you all, so thank you for reviewing it and highlighting it. We spelled out sort of the practical issues that we're bringing to you, and you also heard from council some other vantage points. We deferred to the wisdom of the board on this. We just wanted to point out some of the practical issues we see come up, so thank you for considering it.
Hi, Ben Caldwell, MFT. Just to reiterate John's point, pardon me, board member Sovic's point. So if I'm on file with the board as Benjamin Everett Caldwell, And under the proposed change here, I could simply go by Benjamin Caldwell or even Ben Caldwell. Because I have to have my first and last name as it exists on file with the board in that advertisement, as well as my license type and number, it seems like any potential for public confusion about who I am or my licensure status is slim to none. I certainly don't see any concern here, and I appreciate the camped comment and ordered you to move it forward. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Jasmine Smith. I also agree with Ben Caldwell's comment. There are a lot of Jasmine Smiths. However, when you put in my number, it will automatically populate my information. I'm not as bold as everyone else to say all of their full names, but you will see it there if you pull up my number. And I am a doctor of social work and an LCSW with the NASW California chapter.
I just want to share, Sierra Smith with Open Paths Counseling Center. I was not given a middle name. So although I'm not a licensed therapist, I would have been in trouble if I would have had to put in a middle name because I did not acquire a middle name until I got married and moved my former last name to be my middle name. But if I would have been licensed before that time, I would not be able to put something in. So.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments from the audience, do we have any other comments from the board or a motion?
Justin Huft. I motion to approve the proposed modified regulation text for CCR section 1811 as set forth in
I'm
attachment.
sorry. We need a motion first to accept or reject the comment, then we can move to the
Option
text.
one.
Oh, thank you. Justin Huft, I motion to direct staff to proceed as recommended, as specified, and provide the responses to the comments as indicated in the staff recommended responses.
Second.
We had a second? Sorry. Yep. All right. If seeing no other comments, oh, Eleanor?
This might be a silly thing, but I know we're talking about having their names and then their numbers, but I just want to make sure we're not going to, that won't be another issue of them not putting their number because, you know, in advertising. So I'm not sure where that fits in, but that was just a question.
If they don't put in their number, they'd be in violation, and that's a long-standing requirement. That's not new. So they all, most people should be aware of that now. We have a sample advertising on our website that shows that, and all of them have the license numbers.
Great. Thank you. With that, Rachel, will you take the vote, please?
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sovet,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yes, so next is we have motions A and B on the next page, which is regarding the proposed modified text. So what we're doing is we already had one modified text, and then this is further modifying it. So we need a motion so that we can adjust that. So whoever wants to go forward, if they do.
Thank you. Justin Huft, I motion to approve the proposed modified regulation text for CCR section 1811 as set forth in attachment A and direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process, including preparing modified text for notice of a 15-day public comment period. If after that 15-day comment period, the board does not receive any objections or adverse recommendations specifically directed at the modified text, the notice, or the procedures followed by the board in proposing or adopting this action, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations and rulemaking file. and adopt amendments to Title 16 CCR Section 1811 as set forth in Attachment A.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments on the motion? Seeing none, any board comments? Nope. Rachel, will you take the vote, please?
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Larez Bailey.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I got mixed up. Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sobek,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you all, and I'm going to be signing off. This is Christy Schildt. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Christy.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 21, discussion and possible action regarding restructuring the pathway to licensure for licensed marriage and family therapists, licensed clinical social workers, and licensed professional clinical counselors. Roseanne, will you provide us an overview?
Yes, thanks, Wendy. So the Workforce Development Committee has been working on this proposal for a while now across several meetings. So this is a proposal to modify the license process to reduce some barriers to entry. The board's licensing statutes regarding licensing and exams are complex, and any amendments need to be very carefully evaluated to prevent unintended consequences and ensure effective implementation. So we're proposing a kind of an overall structural change in 3 phases. And today we'll be discussing phase 1 to potentially run as a legislative proposal. So what phase 1 is it involves some amendments to the licensing and exam frameworks that can make a fairly large impact and are fairly easy to implement. They can be implemented without a lot of structural change and without affecting a lot of people in the process. Phase 2 would be to implement the transition to the AMFTRB national exam as the clinical exam, LMFT, and that's something that the board's already working on. And then phase 3 is a lot more complex, and it would adjust to the timing of the board's clinical exams to allow candidates to take those exams earlier in the licensing process. And so there's a lot of moving pieces that have to go along with phase 3. We have to have the national exam entities on board and have basically agreements with them and have it approved by them. We have a lot of consideration of unintended consequences there for people that are already in the exam process, because the structure of the exam process would need to change significantly. So we're proposing moving forward with the changes that we can make now and not delaying those, and then working on phase 3 at the same time while that proposal is running. So you can see a summary of the proposed phases in attachments A and B. There's a visual summary, an estimated timeline, and then kind of an overall summary of what the end result would look like for the licensing process. But the focus of today's discussion will be the phase 1 changes shown in attachments A1 through A4, with the goal of having board approval to run a legislative proposal in the next legislative cycle, which begins in January 2026. So first, I'm going to discuss the changes to the LMFT, LCSW, and LPCC statutes, and then I'm going to discuss separately the changes to the LEP statutes. The changes have been drafted into the LMFT, LCSW, and LCPC Practice Acts are several different components. First, the timing of the law and ethics exam. The proposal would allow associates to choose when they take the California Law and Ethics exam. Instead of being required as they are now, they are required to take it every year before registration renewal until the exam is passed. Additionally, they have to pass the exam before a subsequent registration number or licensure, whichever occurs first, is obtained. Under this proposal, associates would take the exam when they are ready. They don't have to attempt it every year in order to renew the registration. However, it still must be passed before a subsequent registration number is issued, and also before they become eligible to take the clinical exam. Making this change would prevent delays with registration renewal that sometimes happens when an associate forgets to take the exam or puts in their application too late and can't schedule the exam before their registration renewal comes up. And that can sometimes create problems because they can't renew their registration then until they attempt the exam. So that change we think would help with that issue that occurs. And given that we have a relatively new requirement that came into effect a couple years ago, that associates must now complete 3 hours of CE covering California law and ethics each year. So we believe that public protection is maintained because part of the reason that we did the L&E requirement every year is to make sure that they're sort of getting, even if they're not passing the exam, they're attempting it and hopefully studying to pass it. So they're still getting that coursework every year before renewal, but they're just not having to attempt the exam every year. The second changes that we're proposing are placing an age limit of 7 years on the passing score for the California Law and Ethics exam. Currently, there is no age limit on the California Law and Ethics exam score that the board will accept. We do have a 7-year age limit on the clinical exam, but there was not one set for the California Law and Ethics exam. And the longer the California Law and Ethics exam has been offered, which has been offered now since 2016, the older some of those scores are going to get for people that are not licensed. So we would have to, currently with no age limit, we would have to accept all scores regardless of age. So if we get a score in 2035, or somebody passed in 2016, we would have to accept it. And so there's certain implications for that. So what would happen if we put an age limit of 7 years on is to obtain a subsequent registration number, the applicant will need to have passed the California Law and Ethics exam no more than 7 years prior to when they apply for their subsequent registration number. So every time they get another registration number, that the exam must be passed again if the score is more than 7 years old. In addition, we're applying for initial license issuance. The California Law and Ethics exam score would need to have been passed no more than 7 years prior to the board's receipt of the application. So recognizing the potential adverse impact on individuals who submit their applications shortly after this age limit takes effect, we have written into the proposal a 3-year grace period from the anticipated effective date of the bill. So during the grace period, the 7-year age limit on the Law and Ethics exam will not apply to any applicant for initial license issuance or for a subsequent associate registration number until basically January 1, 2030. So it gives people that are kind of in the process that maybe have an old score and are about getting ready to apply, they would have some time to either apply and get their application in, or if they need to take the exam again because they have a very old score, maybe they passed it in 2016, they could have time to attempt the exam again and get a newer score to demonstrate more current knowledge. The next change we're proposing is to change the registration number length and time supervised experience hours are valid. So we're proposing extending both from 6 years to 7 years. Right now, your experience hours are valid for 6 years, and a registration number, which is basically before the time until you have to get a subsequent registration number, they're both 6 years. So we're proposing to extend that to 7 years. That will serve a couple of purposes. It will allow applicants an additional year if they need to take a break, something that we hear frequently. Because of life events or circumstances, some licensees or some applicants, while they're gaining hours, decide to take a break or they have a hardship. It will also align the allowable age of experience hours with the allowable clinical exam score and the law and ethics exam score. So what we're doing here is we're kind of aligning everything to 7 years. So that'll allow a simpler process when we eventually transition to allow the clinical exam to be taken early, because under that eventual scenario, instead of locking in hours upon clinical exam eligibility, we would now say all experience hours and exam scores at application for licensure need to be 7 years old. So it's a little bit more of a simple process rather than having some things be 6 years, some things be 7 years. It gets kind of confusing. So that's what we're trying to do with that. Another
thing that this proposal does is it adds an exception to the prohibition on working in a private practice with a subsequent registration number. And this is a big thing that comes up. We've discussed it several times over my time here. Every few years it comes up because there is a prohibition in the law that you cannot, if you have a subsequent registration number, you cannot work in a private practice or a professional corporation. So under this proposal, the law would continue to prohibit associates generally with a subsequent associate registration from working in private practice or professional corporations. But it would permit an associate with a subsequent registration number to request a one-time 2 consecutive year hardship extension. And with that extension, they can finish gaining their experience hours working in one private practice or professional corporation if the supervisor or employer and the associate submit a request to the board providing specific information and showing good cause. Like I said, we've discussed this numerous times, most recently in August 2022. It comes up quite a bit because there are individuals that experience hardship and then they find that they need a subsequent registration number but they already have a job in a private practice, or the only job that they can find is in a private practice, and they're told, no, sorry, you can't work in that setting, so you can't gain any hours there. At the August 2022 meeting, the possibility of just removing the prohibition on private practice completely was discussed. However, there were concerns about potential exploitation of associates that there was concern from both stakeholders and the board because there's a concern that these particular private practice settings might have more of an incentive to utilize associates permanently or utilize them as cheaper labor, things like that. So the board did not feel like removing it completely was something that they wanted to pursue. So this proposal kind of strikes a balance of somebody can do it for a limited time in one setting, but that's all they get. Basically, it can't be an indefinite thing. The proposal today also makes several technical cleanup changes that are mostly minor, but some of them are a little more substantive. We're deleting the exam re-scoring fee for each license types. Now that the exams are scored electronically, that fee is obsolete. We're deleting a requirement that if an applicant is unable to pass the clinical exam within 7 years of their initial attempt, they must then go back and pass the California Law and Ethics exam before continuing to attempt the clinical exam. We believe that placing an age limit on the California Law and Ethics exam score renders this requirement obsolete. We did go back and discuss, there was a concern raised at the past meeting because we're doing a grace period with the L&E score. If this provision should also have a grace period, and we don't believe that it needs one because basically, if somebody is still, it'll give them a couple more attempts maybe, but if they still would need to have a score that's 7 years old or less if they don't pass by 2030. So they're still going to have to go back and take the exam with a newer score if they don't get licensed. We're doing amendments to clarify that the board may accept a passing clinical exam score obtained early from another state. So the board basically cannot grant clinical exam early eligibility before all education requirements and the law and ethics exam and experience hours are completed, but some other states allow the clinical exam to be taken earlier, for example, some upon graduation. And so if somebody applies to the board with a passing clinical exam score from another state and they haven't gained all their hours, current statute is unclear about whether that score can be accepted. We do accept it, but the proposed amendments will clarify that the score is acceptable. So that's for the LMFTs, LPCCs, and LCSWs. We had to do things a little differently for LEPs because they gain their experience and their process is very different from the other license types. So the LEP language is shown in attachment A4. LEPs, they take a single licensing exam that
incorporates a clinical component and the law and ethics component, and they don't register as a board with the board as an associate to accrue supervised experience hours. So a lot of the changes that I just discussed don't apply to them at all, because most of them are talking about the exam or something that's a rule for gaining hours while registered as an associate. The one major proposed change does apply. Like the other license types, LEPs are subject to a 6-year time limit on qualifying experience hours. So we recommend extending that period to 7 years for LEPs, also consistent with what we're doing for the other license types. And the other just really minor technical amendment that applied to LEPs is the deletion of the outdated exam rescoring fee. And I do want to note that the language shown in attachment A4 assumes that the amendments to Business and Professions Code 4989.20 that are currently running in SB 775 become law on January 1, 2025. It looks like at this point that's going to happen, but we had to draft, we're changing that section so significantly that we had to draft it into that section. Also want to point out that if the proposed statutory amendments that we're talking about today are successfully adopted via legislation, then we will then need to do corresponding regulatory changes to make sure that the current regulations are consistent with the statute. Okay, in terms of past discussion at the committee level, April 4th, the Workforce Development Committee reviewed the proposal, had staff draft some additional language for the other practice acts, and referred it to the Policy and Advocacy Committee for consideration. And then at its July meeting, the Policy and Advocacy Committee reviewed the proposal and directed staff to make some clarifying revisions pertaining to the exception of the prohibition on working on a private practice with a subsequent number. They wanted some clarification that it's a one-time extension, clarify that work for the employer must not commence or continue until the extension is approved by the board, and then finally clarify that the applicant for the extension will specify a date that the temporary practice allowance that they want it to begin. And so we've made those changes, and the committee, upon the changes being made, directed that the proposal be brought to the board for consideration as legislation. So there was one tiny additional change that we need to make that on page 2115. I do want to split the last sentence in subdivision D into its own section because it's just cleaner that way, and also do that for corresponding sections 496.28 and 499.100. So just a little technical change there that I discovered after the fact. So with that, we'll open it up.
Okay. Any questions or comments from board members? Dr. Boyd.
Yeah, Nick, OPCC member. So I had a couple questions for the for the hardship. Is there particular language about how that's being defined, or how would folks know what is considered a hardship and what is not?
We're going to be pretty lenient on the hardship. We want them to just basically, provide their reason for not being able to qualify. We're saying a showing of good cause, but we've defined that as extended medical leave, family caregiving, difficulties finding employment, or circumstances beyond their controls. And we'll write some additional in like an FAQ or something like that. We'll do an FAQ to sort of explain that, but we just basically want them to think about the reason and think about gaining their hours and getting that process completed in the private practice if we're allowing that. So we're going to be pretty accepting of that.
Okay. And then for the request that's being made by the supervisor and associate, is there a reason why both of those have to be requested?
Yeah, we want the supervisor, and especially the supervisor, to kind of realize that it's not something to be taken lightly. You know, we don't want companies exploiting supervisors, and we don't want this to be happening to we don't want to allow it for everyone. So we want them both to sort of be sign that they know that this is a one-time extension. It's for two years. So it's for a limited time. And so that way both parties are sort of on the same page and they know the rules, which will be in the application.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I guess that kind of ties into my next question. So, and I may have missed it if it's in here, and I apologize. So at what point does the request have to be made for that subsequent registration and the exception? The reason I'm asking that is, let's say, for example, somebody applies for the subsequent registration number, they put in their request. I'm assuming there's going to be a processing delay for that to be granted. So there will be a gap in time, correct, for them to continue to work?
Yes, we don't think that we think that the processing time for this will be fairly quick because it's not a lot of information. It's just basically going to be a staff reviewing to make sure that they filled everything out. They can do it. They can do it if they want. They have to apply for their subsequent registration, and that has a processing time. So if they want to do it at the same time, then they can do that with their subsequent registration, and it'll be ready by the time the subsequent registration is renewed. If they find out after the fact, or if they want to apply really early and say, you know, I want it to start upon renewal, they can. If they want to be ahead of the game, they can do that. If they find out like that they have a new job and then they're going to start in a month and they want to request it, they can do that. So they can kind of control the date. If they do it like really last minute, like I'm starting a new job tomorrow and I want to request it, then it might take them a little bit of there might be a little lag time, but
Is there, excuse me, and is there like in an FAQ or somewhere that helps somebody understand when they can request for the subsequent registration currently? So like, for example, like if they know my registration is ending in January, do they know that I can apply early for a subsequent, or do they know that do they think I have to wait until after my license? I guess I'm just trying to think about folks not getting confused about when they can apply, because my concern is there will be a gap right during that time, and we don't want to create any of those issues or folks being able to have that continuity of employment.
it will probably be something included with the subsequent registration application. I'm going to turn that over to Steve. I'm not sure exactly how they're notified now.
In the renewal, I think actually in the renewal forms or the renewal notices we send out, we do explain that 6-year time, make sure that you're aware of that. And I believe we actually had started a while back trying to email these candidates a little bit more, these registrants before. So I think definitely FAQs would help.
We will definitely be doing an FAQ for this, and we'll probably be updating it as we get new questions, because I'm sure that there will be quite a few questions in different scenarios. So we've had pretty good success with when we roll out something new, doing a detailed FAQ, and then sort of as we get new unique questions, adding to it to account for different things that come up. So this will be definitely one of those that meets that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had a question. Okay, so there's some agencies, including large companies, I would even say like our CDCR or schools, that won't, they'll actually dismiss our associates for not getting their license within like 6 years. So I was just wondering if there's going to be some efforts to kind of work with them, because they might have to do some policy changes that would take a long time.
There is a rule for some state agencies that they have to gain it within a certain time, and that's kind of at their discretion. So they can do that if they want. This would be separate for that, and those aren't private practices. So that you can work as far as the board is concerned, you can work in an agency like CDCR because it's a government agency in an exempt setting. You can work with a subsequent registration number, but it is always up to the employer to choose not to, and there's not really a whole lot that's kind of at their discretion. We can't really regulate that.
So what my suggestion is I'm assuming that maybe they came up with that 6 year because of maybe even our 6 year limit. So I don't know if there's a way of just even working with them to kind of let them know this is coming down the pike, because they may, you know, it's a huge thing if somebody loses their job just because they don't have the hours, but that's going to take some time for them to kind of work out the kinks in their agencies. So.
Yeah, we can make an effort to reach out to them, and I'm sure once this, if this runs as a bill, it will probably get flagged by them even as well.
Quick question on this. And I know we've had lots of conversations already. One thing in rereading it before we were coming in today and then hearing you speak about it again, can people apply for extensions for more than one job site? Because there are people in licensure who are working more than one job site to get their hours.
No, it's limited to one employer. So if the employer is 2 job sites, then they can, you know, if they're working at office building A and B, but it is one employer. And that's just as to if they, you know, they want to work in a private practice, it's their job. That's the job they can get. This is sort of a compromise between not allowing it all. So we just did one.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Any questions or comments from the public?
Hi, Leah Brew, LPCC and counselor educator. I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Dr. Boyd said. Your focus was really on continuity for the clinician. I'm worried about continuity of care for the clients. So when you talk about turning around the requests for an extension, if that's a month, that's a really long time for a client not to get care. So I don't know if there's a way to expedite anything where somebody needs an extension since they have to actually terminate with those clients for a particular amount of time.
I don't know if I'm going to add anything, but I mean, currently, like the subsequent registrations, we do put those on the forefront every time we receive them to get them going to make sure that continuity. So really, I think, and once again, I think the actual processing of the extension it's probably going to be, like the extension would be approved before the subsequent renewals, actually the subsequent registration numbers garnered. I don't have the processing times on the subsequent registration, but it's a quick turnaround time. It's not, once we receive it, it can be quick. It's a matter of the actual registrant to be aware of that's where we have the problem. And it's where a week from they have to renew and they're like, why can't I renew? It's like, well, this is why. And that's where we really, it is kind of keep getting out there. One of the things we always keep telling people, check your renewal number, make sure you understand what's going on with your registration. It's only valid currently right now for 6 years. It's really important. And so honestly, I don't have the numbers of, registrants that fall into this. It's probably not a great number, but like you say, it is very, with the patient continuity of care, it is a stressful, but when we get in those situations too, we work with the candidates if they reach out to try to get them through as fast as possible.
And does or will the letter include, if you're filing for an extension, you have to pause your work at that agency until approved?
That's something that.
So the way that we're structuring this, we're going to it's not going to be as onerous a process as even applying for a subsequent registration. That will probably be the part that is more labor intensive. We're kind of planning on structuring this as kind of like our temporary practice allowance, where most of it's just click through on Breeze, and if you qualify, you get it. We'll probably have to have a staff do a quick review because there's some fill-in boxes to basically release it. But it's not going to be as labor intensive as even the subsequent registration number. So we're planning on it being a really minor task. We're probably going to ask for it as part of the bill, a half-time position, even so we can get additional. So if anything would be the holdup, it would be the subsequent number, not the extension. So it should be done together.
Okay, That's helpful. And knowing that you're sending those out early is helpful too. I just, like 1 week of a client missing might be okay, even if they're in crisis, but 2 weeks could be life-threatening in certain situations, right? So.
Right.
And that's why we like this, because it is really, when we get those calls, it's hard to say sorry. So this will be definitely an improvement. We have a way to kind of mitigate that. So
Thank you.
Hi, Sierra Smith, Open Paths Counseling Center. I have actually had a couple of folks who went through our clinical training program approach me because they have had this issue come up around needing an extension, and they've said, is there any way you can hire me? And one of the things that I think needs to be taken into context is what is happening for nonprofits in community mental health, and the fact that in our current state of affairs right now, many of us don't have the capacity to hire many associates. So as there was a big push to hire associates as opposed to having them do work voluntarily, we've really taken that to heart and we've worked to try to do that. And yet philanthropy is very fluid in where it puts its money. And a lot of it is shifting currently. A lot of it has been in flux for the last 5 years at least. We're going to see it go more and more in flux. And then for those of us who are nonprofit community counseling centers, who are 501c3s that work with licensed therapists who are our employees and supervise our pre-licensed therapists, we cannot bill Medi-Cal. So we don't have a regular revenue stream if we're doing non-specialty mental health. You can only bill Medi-Cal if you're doing specialty mental health for severe mental health concerns. So for those of us who are serving the general public, for folks who are financially disadvantaged and are trying to provide low fee services, we don't have a revenue stream that allows us to sustain employment for associates because we are unable to have the sustainability that would come from billing Medi-Cal, where most of our clients are approved. So it's really this interesting disconnect, which is why we end up losing so many of our pre-licensed therapists to private practice, even if they did want to stay in community mental health, but perhaps weren't in a position where they wanted to work with severe chronic mental illness, because that wasn't their calling. So it's really put some of the folks in a precarious place. So I am actually in support of them having the opportunity to stay in private practice in order to get licensure, with the hope that at some point we'll figure out how community counseling centers that are working with folks with mild to moderate concerns can figure out how to have a sustainable revenue stream so that we can employ them and keep them in community mental health in the long run. Thank you.
So Dr. Smith, LCSW with the, okay. I was trying to reduce the time. So Dr. Smith, LCSW with the NASW California, I echo the comments from the public as well as some of the comments from the board. One of the things that I wanted to ask the board is if the BBS will be sharing the status time of the subsequent registration. Right now, we know the ASW application time, which I believe is 1 month from where we are now. And then I believe the LCSW is about 3 months away. So if we could just know, that way it will help us be able to identify how long it's taking for those subsequent registrations to be approved. Also to the point about working in private practice, I know that there has been concerns about exploitation, but there is unfortunately a lot of concerns about exploitation in agencies and government organizations because many of them do not have the staff, especially LCSWs, to be able to provide supervision. And so that is why there is an organization called Motivo who is hiring LCSWs to be able to provide supervision because those organizations don't have it. And typically the private practice would be able to have that and be able to do it where the associate can receive increased income, but also potentially lower caseloads to be able to provide more appropriate and effective care to their clients. So I do want to consider that, especially with the concern of associates losing their jobs in government organizations, which brings back a point about the concern with the exam, right? Because it's linked to the issues of the passage rates of the clinical exam. Thank you.
Good morning, Bindu Mokamla, Policy Manager from the NASWCA. We would like to ask your review for two of the business and profession codes. The first one being section 4996.4, fee for re-examination. The proposed changes currently state that an applicant who fails a clinical examination may, within 1 year from the notification date of failure, retake that examination as regularly scheduled without further application, etc. So we would like the board to consider an extension of the window to retake that exam from 1 year to 2 years. And we would also request a reduction of the fees required for a new application after the failure of the ASWB clinical exam, as the fee for a new application before taking the ASWB clinical exam is currently $250. And furthermore, we're only one of the only 2 states, alongside with North Dakota, that do not allow a waiver to retake the ASWB clinical exam before the required 90-day waiting period. And this would be if the examinee's score is within 10 correct answers of a passing score. And so we believe that not offering the waiver is a barrier to obtaining licensure, especially given the previous statement shared by Dr. Smith regarding the bias of the clinical exam. And applicants are only allowed 2 waivers to take the exam before the 90-day waiting period within a 12-month period. And this would greatly support and potentially increase the number of LCSWs, as we know that the pass rate is currently higher for individuals who take the exam more than once. And I would also like to thank Dr. Boyd for the concern you raised regarding the hardships and trying to define what qualifies as a hardship. So we look forward to the release of the FAQ.
I can respond to the 4996.4, changing 1 year to 2 years. That will be considered or discussed as part of phase 3 when we kind of do some timing changes to the clinical exam. That fits in well with there, so we can have that discussion at that time. It's a little premature to do that right now. With regard to the retake waiver with other states, I'm going to let Steve speak to that. I know that exams had.
We did discuss that, and I honestly have to look back at what we discussed that was brought to a board meeting, but we can look into it again.
I believe there were some logistical costs with doing that would have required us to raise the fee for everybody, not just the people
That's what we're.
that were going to benefit from it.
That's
And
what
so
kind of we're looking
that was the concern.
That was one of the concerns, but I can look more too. And then additionally for the fee, actually, we are looking at fees next year, so that will be in the conversation about possibly lowering.
Yeah, we are looking at some temporary fee reductions and regs. So I don't know if it's going to be related to exams or not, but it'll be related to at least associate and license fees.
Some of those costs.
Dr. Smith again. LCSW, NASW California. We also wanted to bring attention to 4996.23 in regards to the supervised postmaster's experience. Part D3 talks about the maximum of 1,000 hours, which includes the client center advocacy, consultation, evaluation, research, direct supervisor contact, workshops, seminars, training sessions, and conferences. So I know that we've had a conversation about that, and I do appreciate that, so thank you. We're requesting a review of this to allow the pre-degree hours for the MSW program, because in order for an applicant to be eligible for an LCSW application, they must have attended and graduated from a CSWE accredited school of social work or welfare. And to be able to do that, they have to abide by the CSWE's educational policy and accreditation standards, last reviewed in the 2022, which is often called the EPAS. So for social workers, we have to engage in practice-informed research and research-informed practice. We have to evaluate and assess individuals, family groups, organizations, and communities. We have to advance human rights, social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. We have to engage in anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which aligns with the statements that I stated earlier for that 1,000 hours. These hours are also directly supervised by an MSW or an LCSW. Similarly to MFT trainees, who also all hours are gained as a student. So as social work students, we have to also coordinate with the school and the site to make sure that there is a written agreement by the student, the site, and the school that details each party's responsibilities, including the method in which supervision will be provided. They require regular progress reports and evaluations similarly to MFT trainees. The site must provide oversight to ensure that the social work student's experience falls within the scope of practice in accordance with the 9 core competencies, which some I shared earlier. MFT trainees are permitted to earn a maximum of 1,300 supervised hours work experience towards their license before their degree is awarded. Of that 1,300 hours, 750 are related to their direct counseling, it was a bug, counseling and supervision contact, while 550 are related to that non-clinical experience that I stated social workers must do at the 1,000 requirement. Again, we understand that the board has previously shared concerns regarding the portability of the LCSW license to other states, but the ASWB exam is a universal requirement, and because we do not have reciprocity with any other states, applicants would still have to comply with whatever that state's requirements are. So this would not create any challenges for California LCSWs because we would have at least met that universal requirement of the exam and still have to complete the other requirements of that state. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Yes, we do intend to have discussions considering the possibility of counting pre-degree hours for both LCSWs and LPCCs. We are considering doing that as part of phase 3 with the early exam, or if the timing of those two, if we can do one faster than the other, we may do those separately. So we're actually in the process of looking at that. So stay tuned. You'll be hearing about something about that soon.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other public comments, do we have any board comments or a motion? Or I can make a motion. Roseanne, I think the motion is to direct staff to make any discussed changes and any non-substantive changes to the language and pursue as a legislative proposal.
Yes, I would just add that to make the discussed changes to 4980 Business and Professions Code 4984.01, 4996.28, and 4999.100.
Okay. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I would like to second it. Eleanor Uribe.
Any other board questions or comments? We'll go back to the public. Any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none. Rachel, can you take the vote, please?
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
John Zovek,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes, thank you.
Motion carries.
What do you think?
We have probably about an hour, hour and a half left.
We will take a 15-minute break and then to item 22, discussion and possible action regarding statutory amendments related to the practice of pastoral counseling. And Sarita, I think we are going to you on this one.
Yes, thank you. The board's practice acts require a valid and active license or registration to provide services within the scope of marriage and family therapy, clinical social work, professional clinical counseling, and educational psychology. Business and Professions Code sections 4980.01, 4999.22, and 4996.13 outlined within this memo. Currently exempt priests, rabbis, and ministers of the gospel of any religious denomination when performing counseling services as part of their pastoral or professional duties. While the board notes the benefits of counseling in a pastoral or faith-based setting for those seeking guidance for personal matters, there are also concerns when an unlicensed individual appearing to be working in their ministerial or pastoral capacity incorporates practice methods into their counseling that are to be utilized by a licensed mental health professional. The board has occasionally received consumer complaints of this nature when it is noted an individual claiming to be performing in their ministerial pastoral capacity is providing counseling services independently outside of a religious organization, and the individual charges a fee for services separate from compensation received from their customary duties of a religious organization. In some cases, the board is unable to take any disciplinary action due to the language in our current exemption statutes. The topic was initially brought up by staff for discussion at the former licensing committee meeting back in January of 2023. The intent of the discussion was to propose clarifying the exemption language in the board's practice acts. And I just want to note that the intent is not to regulate individuals performing in a pastoral or faith-based capacity. During this discussion back in 2023, there was examples of exemption laws in the states of Texas, Florida, and Arizona that provided more clarity for individuals performing in a faith-based setting, which is outlined in attachment B. Since that time, staff has collaborated with subject matter experts to conduct further research on the topic. The research included reviewing publication outlined in the memo and distinguishing practice methods used in pastoral counseling and in mental health professions. Considering the diverse religious and cultural influences in regions throughout the United States, staff and subject matter experts also researched and reviewed additional exemption laws in other states outlined in attachment C. And these research findings were initially presented before the Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting in January of this year, 2025. Following the January 25 Policy and Advocacy meeting, staff began the process of drafting amendments to the language using Business and Professions Code Section 4996.13. That's the Practice Act for LCSWs as a foundational model in the drafting, because the language compared to the other practice acts is more comprehensive and detailed. After consulting with subject matter experts and legal counsel, it was determined that proposed amendments to the language should focus on faith-based counseling rather than pastoral counseling. Additionally, the language should establish clear criteria distinguishing faith-based counseling from clinical mental health counseling. And the aim of the proposed amendments is to provide the following key differentiating factors for individuals serving in a faith-based capacity. The services and activities performed are under the direct auspices of the faith-based entities such as a church, synagogue, mosque, or other recognized religious organization. Fees beyond the religious official's customary compensation from the faith-based entity are not charged or received. The individual does not state or imply that they are licensed or registered to practice clinical social work, which is in the context of this foundational model of the LCSW Practice Act. And the individual does not hold themselves out to the public by any title and description of services incorporating the words psychosocial or clinical social worker. And the services provided by the individual are limited to counseling service in a religious or spiritual context and does not involve the diagnosis or treatment of mental health disorders. Proposed amendments have also been drafted for the LMFT and LPCC Practice Acts. At this time, it was determined not to draft amendments to the language for LEP Practice Act due to the differing nature of the work in the LEP profession. The proposed amendments for the three license types were presented before the Policy and Advocacy Committee in July 2025. Following discussions and recommendations from committee members and stakeholders, staff revised the proposed amendments. Those revisions to the proposed amendments are shown in red text in attachments A1 through A3. So with this discussion, staff recommends conducting an open discussion on the proposed amendments to the Business and Profession Code sections that are outlined in attachments A1 through A3. Direct staff to make any discussed changes or any and/or any non-substantive changes and to pursue as a legal or as a legislative proposal.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Nope. It's like, do we want to make a motion? Or do we? Okay.
Is the motion to conduct this one here?
To
Right.
direct staff to make
Yeah.
substantive and non-substantive changes? And pursue the legislative proposal? Okay. Dr. Boyd, you made that?
Yes, I'm trying to find, yes.
Um, I'll second the motion. So we have a motion. What's that?
What's the motion?
The motion is to direct staff to make any discussed changes and any non-substantive changes and pursue as a legislative proposal. Okay. Do we have any public comments on this item? Amen. Kathy, you looked a little like you were on the fence.
Hi, Kathy Atkins with CAMT. I just wanted to thank you all for taking this up. It's a very complicated issue. I don't envy you, and I appreciate, CAMT appreciates putting psychotherapy into it as one of the words. So thank you.
Thank you.
Did you get your second? She was a second. I
Do
did.
we have any other comments from board members? Oh, Mr. Subak.
Roseanne, quick question for you. We're using psychosocial, psychotherapy, or clinical social worker. In advertising, isn't psychotherapist also a protected term, and should that also be included in here? Oh, I'm sorry. I directed that to the wrong person. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I apologize from the bottom of my heart.
She would be more.
It says any title description of service, any title or description of services incorporating the word psychosocial, psychotherapy, or clinical social worker. I think I think it's reasonable to assume psychotherapist would be included in that, just because it's a title or a description of services. So I don't know that we want to go with an exhaustive list of all possible prohibited terms, but I think that you can make a reasonable assumption that you can't say you're a psychotherapist, and it would be false advertising anyways. And it would be, those are already protected terms under the General Practice Act.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my computer just stopped connecting. Counselors wasn't a term, right? That would be forbidden.
What's that?
Counselor, that's not anything that would be forbidden. Like,
No, counselor is not a protected
Okay.
term because you have like a school counselor, things like that.
okay.
It's outlined in that.
Okay. Okay. Right, we're good. Any other questions? Okay. Rachel, I think we're ready for a vote.
Wendy Strack,
Yeah, we went to public comment.
Sorry.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Abstain.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. We are moving on to item 24. My notes. Discussion of possible action regarding Assembly Bill 742, Department of Consumer Affairs licensing applicants who are descendants of slaves. Roseanne.
Yes, so the board already took positions on legislation in May. And this was one of the bills the board took a support position on, but it has been amended substantially. So I wanted to refresh the position so that we can send another letter on the most current version of the bill, which is why I brought this today. There's also several bills where you will see were cut from the agenda that did not have substantive amendments since May, so that the board positions still stand on those, which is why those were cut. But this particular bill, AB 742, would require boards within DCA to expedite applicants seeking licensure if they are certified with the State Bureau for Descendants of American Slavery as a descendant of American slaves. So under current law, boards under DCA expedite the licenses for various reasons. We expedite the license process for applicants who are honorably discharged members of the U.S. Armed Forces, or for we also expedite for military spouses whose spouses are stationed here. We expedite for those who have been admitted to the U.S. as a refugee, granted asylum, or hold a special immigrant visa. So there's various reasons. So this particular bill would add that if somebody is certified as a descendant of American slaves. This bill is running in tandem with another bill that kind of has a broader scope, and it actually, it's SB 518, and that's running concurrently. That bill proposes establishment of the Bureau for Descendants of American Slavery. And so it would task that particular bureau with determining how an individual's status as a descendant will be verified, and would establish a process to certify descendants, and it provides a very specific definition of descendants. So this bill is dependent on that bill passing as well and being funded. But this bill affects the board directly, which is why you're seeing this one today. The author, in running this bill, they highlight that descendants of slaves have historically faced barriers to accessing licenses due to the longstanding impact of racial bias. And they state that by prioritizing descendants of slaves when applying for licenses, they hope to increase the number of applicants as well as those who are able to obtain licensure in various business and professions where descendants of slaves have often been overlooked and underrepresented. In terms of a fiscal impact, we don't really see a fiscal impact to the bill. The separate state bureau will be handling all the details of making the determination whether an individual qualifies, and the qualifying applicants will be able to provide a standardized certification that they meet the requirements. So we believe that the increased workload from the bill is minor and absorbable. Like I said, the previous position, the board had a support position on this bill. It has been substantively amended, and the main change is the main substantive change is that it states, it's actually clarifying, but it states that the boards under DCA must expedite applicants seeking licensure that are certified. Before it said prioritize, and that was a little bit unclear on what we were supposed to do. We kind of assumed it meant expedite, but now it's a lot clearer. So with that, I will open it up for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Roseanne. Rebecca?
Yeah, thanks. I was actually going to ask about the difference between expedite and give priority review status, which is in, I see item 4 under existing law. So yeah, is there anything else to say besides providing clarity between those two distinctions?
The priority review status, that's for something for medical board. I'm not sure why they use the term priority review status. Our law is to say expedite, so I think that the expedite change is consistent with what we already do, so that it's a good term and it's much better than the previous where it said what did it say? I just saw it. Prioritize, like expedite shows us exactly what we need to do. So.
Any other comments?
Justin Huft. Is there a specific motion that you would be looking for support?
It would just be a motion to.
Motion to support. Justin Huft, motion to support the bill.
Second. Dr. Walker.
Right. Any other comments from the board? Do we have any public comments on this item?
Can I just react for a moment? I do remember this. This is moving along quite quickly, which I'm, yeah, just a comment. Do you recall if there was any opposition before they made these amendments?
There was opposition, and then they took the opposition, when it went to appropriations, they took the opposition off. So I don't know if they're still in opposition, but I'm guessing that's with the amendments, maybe some of the opposition got removed. Now, on the most recent analysis that I just saw, it said that there were some oppositions, but it didn't name them. So I guess that they didn't report it. So.
You're going to keep us posted, so.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted. We're getting to the end of the legislative session, so within the next couple of weeks, everything that should be decided. So we should have answers by the next policy. We will have answers by the next policy committee meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment. Sorry about that, Dr. Walker.
The NASW California in full support of this bill.
Thank you.
Sierra Smith, Open Paths Counseling Center. I'm in support of the bill, and I hope that if it does pass, that there's a lot of education around it, because I suspect that a lot of folks who would qualify will not know that they need to register through the state to be recognized as such. So I think that that'll be an important part of making sure that it's got messaging attached to it.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, Rachel, will you take the vote?
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huff,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item 27. Discussion and possible action regarding Senate Bill. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that I'm going to need to step away, but I just wanted to say it was really nice to see all the different organizations here, so the different licenses. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, Eleanor. Have a safe drive back. Okay. To item 27, discussion and possible action regarding Senate Bill 744, accrediting agencies. And Roseanne, we'll go to you.
Yes. So this particular bill was not considered at the May meeting because it was a gut and amend meeting. They took a bill that was of a completely different topic and made this bill, introduced this bill in its place instead in June. But I felt that it was important to bring because it does affect this board. And this bill has to do with accrediting agencies. This bill is proposing to safeguard California's higher education institutions, financial aid eligibility, and licensure pathways from potential federal disruptions by providing that any national or regional accrediting agency that was recognized by the U.S. Department of Education as of January 1, 2025 will retain recognition under California law through January 20th, 2029, provided it continues to operate in substantially the same manner. So currently, a lot of the board's laws depend on, basically they define school accreditations that are acceptable to the board and recognize qualifying degrees as a school that's accredited by a regional or national institution accrediting agency that is recognized by the United States Department of Education. But our laws also specify that continuing education and additional required coursework with the above described USDE accreditations are acceptable to the board. So this bill is basically safeguarding if that USDE accreditation for some reason goes away, that it would retain that same recognition until January 20th, 2029. And the reason that the author is running this bill is that because of President Trump's executive order specified that accreditors must remove certain DEI information from all standards and emphasizes that policies need to prioritize achievement, accountability, and academic freedom. The Department of Education is using these new standards to target universities by threatening to remove their accreditation. And California statutes frequently reference, including our statutes, frequently reference federally recognized or recognized by the U.S. Department of Education for accrediting educational institutions. So if that were to go away, we would have a problem with our laws. And one thing to point out, but I think that they will likely resolve it in the analysis of the bill, the Assembly Committee on Higher Education noted that the bill does raise a policy question regarding whether the state will assume responsibility for ensuring that educational institutions continue to operate in a substantially similar manner should this law be triggered due to federal action. And they said that the appropriate mechanism for addressing this concern remains to be determined. I think that they'll likely either work that out before the end of session, or I don't think that we see that it's not common for schools to lose accreditation. So I don't see that as a major concern, but probably something that the state does need to think about on a wider scale. So staff is recommending that the board consider a support position on this bill.
Thank you, Roseanne. Any questions or comments from board members? Do we want to make a motion?
Sorry, Dr. Walker, I'll make a motion. Is there a written statement here or are we good? Or just?
The motion would just be for the board to support the bill.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So I'll make a motion for the board to support.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none. All right. Can we take the vote, please?
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item 28, discussion and possible action regarding Senate Bill 775 amendments. Roseanne.
Yes, so SB 775 is the board's sunset bill, and also the board is sponsoring several amendments in the board's sunset bill this year. The bill proposes extending the board's sunset date until January 1, 2030, and the board has taken a support position on that provision of the bill. And then, like I said, the board is also sponsoring several amendments in SB 775, and one of those particular amendments proposes extending the sunset date of the board's temporary practice allowance from January 1, 2026 until January 1, 2030. And a little bit of background about the temporary practice allowance. It was something that the board sponsored as a bill in 2023, and it provides a 30-day temporary practice allowance to qualifying therapists who are licensed in another U.S. jurisdiction to continue treating existing clients who are visiting California or relocating to California. And because at the time it was a brand new allowance, the board decided to include a sunset date of January 1, 2026, so that the allowance could be reevaluated at the time of sunset review of the board for any potential unintended consequences. At the September 2024 meeting, the board noted that the current data points to the temporary practice allowance being a success. There have not been any unintended consequences, but it was still very early on in implementation. So the board decided to propose amendments to extend the termination date of the temporary practice allowance by 4 years until January 1, 2030. So those amendments are currently included in SB 775. But as part of its background paper for the board's sunset review in March of 2025, the Business and Professions Committees of the Senate and the Assembly noted that they would like to understand how the board enforces the 30-day time frame of the temporary practice allowance, and whether the board believes out-of-state practitioners may be providing services to their clients beyond this time frame. So in order to address this, the committee requested and amended in an additional amendment to the temporary practice allowance. And this was done after the May board meeting. And so it was not discussed at that time because that it had not been written in yet. But basically they asked that we put in an amendment to strengthen accountability of the out-of-state licensee providing services by requiring them to submit a signed statement under penalty of perjury, acknowledging the board's jurisdiction and agreeing to comply with California law. So it's a little bit stronger, more strongly worded, because it just basically says a person who provides, the current law says a person who provides services is deemed to have agreed to practicing under the jurisdiction of the board and be bound by the laws of the state. This actually makes them submit a signed statement under penalty of perjury. So it's just a little bit tougher in the stronger in the language to make sure that they know that they need to be in compliance. So we took this to the July Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting, and they recommended that the board take a support position on those amendments. Also, since the July 31st Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting, the Senate Business and Professions Committee has decided to pursue additional amendments to 3 sections that pertain to the board. And those are not in print yet, so unfortunately I don't have them available today, but we are expecting them anytime. But the amendments are to Business and Professions Code Section 25, and that has to do with requirements for board applicants with this board and the Board of Psychology to complete training in human sexuality. Business and Professions Code 28 requires applicants of this board and Board of Psychology to establish training for applicants in child abuse assessment and reporting. And also BPC 29, which requires both this board and Board of Psychology to consider adopting CE requirements for its licensees in chemical dependency and early intervention. So what the Business and Professions Committees are doing is they are moving these sections from the general BPC code, where it applies to us, both us and psychology, into each individual board's practice act. And that is a good thing, because by moving it directly to the BBS's statutes and decoupling the requirements from the inclusion of the Board of Psychology, it provides this board with greater flexibility to make updates in the future. Because right now, if we were to amend those sections, we would also have to have Board of Psychology agree to the same exact amendments that we were making. All 3 provisions have been in place for an extended period and are in need of revision. But for the above reasons I just discussed, the revision has proven difficult. So we will be able to make needed updates, and it kind of is good timing because it coincides with the work that we're doing in our Workforce Development Committee about looking at all of the education requirements. So the intent of the amendments is to maintain current law without introducing any substantive changes. But upon reviewing a draft of the proposed amendments, I had identified the need for certain technical revisions because the way that it was worded was slightly a substantive change. So the committee has agreed with me on that. And so we're working back and forth to get the technical amendments just right so that the changes are non-substantive. So that piece is sort of in process still. So the recommended action today is twofold. It's to conduct an open discussion regarding the proposed amendments related to the temporary practice allowance and take a support position on the temporary practice allowance amendments. And then it's to direct staff to continue working with the Senate Business and Professions Committee on the additional amendments they are pursuing related to BPC 25, 28, and 29.
Thank you, Roseanne. Any comments or questions from board members? None. Do we want to make a motion? If I can make the motion to take a support position on the amended bill and direct staff to continue working with the Senate Business and Professions Committee on the additional amendments they're pursuing.
Justin Huff, second.
Thank you. Any public comment?
Hi, Ben Caldwell, MFT. This is not in support or opposition, but really just a question about the first proposed amendment. Can you talk about what it would mean on a practical level for the out-of-state practitioner to be subject to the jurisdiction of the board? They wouldn't appear to have a California license or registration that this board could discipline. So I wonder if there is any actual enforcement mechanism there. I mean, maybe you could issue a fine in the event of a consumer complaint, but I don't know what would be there to stop that out-of-state practitioner from just not paying. So practically, what would it mean for that out-of-state practitioner to be under the jurisdiction of the board?
It basically means that they have to follow our laws, and if they aren't following our laws, or they're not practicing in what they've agreed to, that they would be subject to an unlicensed practice, and so it would be a fine. We don't have a lot of jurisdiction. That's kind of one of the problems nationwide with the temporary practice allowances, but this is at least, something that kind of lays the groundwork for, hey, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, for sure. It's better than not having something there. I
Right.
didn't know like how it would work on a practical level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? Being none, Rachel, will you take the vote?
And can I just clarify who made the motion and the second?
What's that? Oh, I made the motion and Justin made the second.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Christopher Jones,
Yes.
John Sovak,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We are moving on to item 29, update on board-sponsored and board-monitored legislation. Roseanne.
Okay, so we are approaching the end of this legislative session. September 12th is the last day for the legislature to pass bills, and then October 12th is the last day for the governor to sign or veto any bills that make it to his desk. So we'll be getting answers on some of the things that are running pretty soon. So we've already discussed SB 775. That bill is currently in its last committee, which is the Assembly Appropriations Committee. So we expect it to pass out of that shortly and then head to the governor's desk. So it's moving along nicely. A few other bills that the board has taken positions on. AB 742, which we talked about today, is also in the Senate Appropriations Committee. AB 489, which talks about artificial intelligence and allows the board to take action against somebody who, or a company that implies that it's a licensed healthcare provider via its AI program. The board has the support on that, and that's in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Unfortunately, SB 579, which is a camp-sponsored bill that would allow the state government operations agency to appoint a mental health and AI workforce group to examine the role of AI in mental health treatment, has become a 2-year bill. The board was supportive of that effort as well, but unfortunately, that is not moving forward this year. AB 427, which was the social work interstate compact that the board had an opposed position on, that bill would have established California as a member state in the social work compact. That is now a 2-year bill. So that's a status update. A full update is in your packet for you. Those are some of the highlights.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? Seeing none, don't think we need a motion on this. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all right, then we will move on to item 30, update on board rulemaking proposals. Christy.
Thank you. I actually have some updates to the status that's newer than what's in this memo on some of these. So the disciplinary guidelines are with in their final phase review. They've actually come through agency, so we're getting close to being able to submit them to OAL for their final review. So we're getting close on that. We're anticipating, we're asking for a July 1, 2026 effective date. The telehealth regulations actually got approved by the Office of Administrative Law just a few days ago. So happy about that. And so that'll be going into effect January 1, 2026. The continuing education proposal, we're still working in the initial review process. We're getting very close to being able to go out to notice to the public on that. The advertising regulations, you saw that today, so we'll keep moving forward on that as well. The English as a second language additional examination time has actually now been submitted to DCA for their review. That's moving along. The fee reductions has been submitted to DCA for the initial review. And that's it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the public? Being none. All right. Moving on to item 31, suggestions for future agenda items. Do we have any suggestions from board members? Dr. Boyd.
I have two things. One of them is for the executive director report, Steve. So I guess it's less an agenda item specifically separate, but part of your ED report. I would like, and I brought this up, I think, the last meeting, I would like to see audit rates, both for supervisors and license holders, more so specifically for supervisors. And it actually ties very well into this last update, given the fact that we're I feel like being too generous with the number of CEs we're giving supervisors. And so I think we need to balance that with ensuring that they're actually completing their education requirements. And so the last time I remember seeing the number, it was like less than 5%, if I remember correctly. I mean, it was super low, right? For supervisor audits. So I think as those numbers increase, we should be increasing the number of audits with that. I recognize the burden, but I do think it should be a priority of this board to do that. The second thing is, I know we talked about it, but I just want to go on record and saying it here that we passed the sunset review with the additional LPCC member, and I would request that we have an item to include legislation from the board to move forward with including an additional LPCC member.
Any other suggestions for future agenda items from board members? Any suggestions for future agenda items from members of the public?
Dr. Smith, LCSW with the NASW California. We are requesting that the board consider a survey for LCSW, ASWs, educators, and MSW students regarding their readiness for licensure and clinical practice. The transparency that we talked about regarding the subsequent registration numbers, in addition to how they're sharing it for the initial application for ASW and licensure. I know that the bills have not been successful, but wanted to re-engage the conversation in regards to title protection for social workers, addressing the exam disparities as I addressed earlier, and then also in regards to the federal bill related to expanding Senior Access to Mental Health Services Act, which would allow LCSWs to bill for services provided in SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, as well as individuals with chronic illnesses, such as those who are disabled or seniors, with the health and behavioral assessment and intervention. Additionally, looking into organizations or companies essentially, such as BetterHelp, in regards to the concern of the services provided under agencies such as, like I stated, BetterHelp. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, Sierra Smith, Open Paths Counseling Center. I want to start by saying that I'm not sure exactly where the board can fall in terms of supporting the initiative that I'm going to bring up, but it's one that some folks have heard me talk about for quite a while, and it came up a couple of times in the conversations today, which is the fact that nonprofit community counseling centers are unable to bill for Medi-Cal for the services that we provide. And I know that there have been conversations that have been happening that CAMFT has been leading on, which we're thrilled about and that the BBS has been a part of. But I'm wondering if there's a way that the BBS can take a stronger stance in this, recognizing that you brought up that you're primarily a consumer protections agency. And the fact of the matter is that at this point in time, there's a lot of folks who can get Medi-Cal reimbursed services for mental health, but there's not enough mental health providers for people who have non-specialty mental health considerations. Again, that mild to moderate considerations. And yet many of the counseling centers, such as the one that I run, we are unable to be approved through the Department of Healthcare Services because we're a 501c3, even though everybody who's working for us providing services is working under a BBS regulated license. So as an employer in community mental health, I cannot reimburse for the services that we are providing that my licensed mental health providers, LCSWs, LMFTs, and one clinical psychologist are overseeing the AMFTs who are providing the services, but we cannot get reimbursed for that. And again, it came again today that AMFTs and ACSWs are looking for places of employment when they need that extension, but we can't hire them because, again, we don't have a pathway. And I recognize that there's a lot of agencies that perhaps this hasn't been as much of a consideration for in the past, because this primarily started happening as DHCS consolidated the licensing underneath the PAVE portal. There was one more point that I wanted to make about this. Oh, yes. The last point I want to make about this is that DHCS made an exemption to this rule for community health workers. So at this point in time, community health workers providing mental health care can be paid for through Medi-Cal for 501c3 organizations, but therapists cannot. That means that in order for me to get reimbursement, my licensed therapists would have to form a for-profit agency, and that for-profit would bill, and then they would have to give me the money as the nonprofit back for me to be able to pay their salary, as opposed to the fact that they are just employed by a nonprofit. So again, the barrier to entry for this is that DHCS through the PAVE portal will not approve Medi-Cal providers who are licensed by the Board of Behavioral Sciences if they are employed through a nonprofit 501c3 agency. And this is really detrimental. If there's any way the board can provide any additional support, I would be incredibly grateful.
Thank you. Any other suggestions for future agenda items? Moving on to item 30. Oh, I'm sorry, Susan.
The only thing that I want to say is that we've talked earlier about getting some answers about the exams about social work. And I hope that we can do that soon.
Yes, I think we're looking at the November meeting to do that.
I may have to ask Sabina if I can ask this question. I just wanted to follow up on public comments in regards to our process for taking their suggestions for future agenda items. What does that process look like, just so that I have an idea?
I'm sure Steve has more procedural information on it, but every time there's a public or a board member suggestion for a future agenda item, board staff notate it, and then as they compile the next agenda meeting, or maybe to see if it goes into a committee. So they triage it. Oh, this should go to a committee. This can go to the full board. And then they also have to figure out how much can we put on an agenda, right? And then what regulations, as you know, in legislation have to bubble to the top. We have to do that kind of work as a priority. And then they just kind of balance out what can make it onto an agenda. And if a lot of items might require a lot of staff work to prepare, how much time do they need that to bring something back to the board? So long story short, it's complicated, but.
Yeah, no, and it is complicated. So just imagine how the public might feel if this doesn't come back up and they wonder, did they hear me? Was it swept under the rug? Where did it come? I appreciate you providing that explanation. It is helpful. So what can we do to be?
Yes. Dr. Walker, So regarding that last comment, we are working on in the background on this. So we expect to have something to report at some point, but that it's kind of going through the process right now. So you likely will hear something on that in the future, but not quite yet.
Yeah. The future, is that in a couple of months? Is that 2026? Christy?
I just also wanted to mention that Steve does also hold monthly stakeholder meetings where all the associations are invited, and we'll sometimes discuss these issues out a little more and kind of figure out, collaborate with them a little more.
Right, so I guess, Steve, you can always speak to this at any time you so choose to. If you're working on a particular topic or subject.
Well,
and
can I
just share
check,
it.
are you asking in general or about
I'm
one
just
specific?
in general, the process
Because
for when we.
They're
respond to that.
suggested, they're not,
Yeah.
they're suggested, so.
That's why I'm asking about the
Yeah.
process.
And just because something's suggested doesn't mean it's going to make it to an official agenda, but that doesn't mean it's not important or won't be necessarily addressed by
It seems
staff
like
or
it's
something
important
like
for us to share out publicly and be transparent because when someone
Absolutely.
makes a suggestion, they wonder, where does it go?
Right.
So they can't ask that question that I'm asking, or they can, but they didn't. So I'm doing it for them as a public member.
No, I see. I totally agree with you. I mean, I would be.
Where does it go?
And that's the, so it's what do we report though back? This is what the comment was made.
It
Beyond,
may or may not be responded to. It may, like Sabina
yeah.
suggested, it may be recommended to go to a subcommittee or committee, whatever. But it's just helpful for people to have this basic information,
Okay.
general information.
Well, so what we'll do is like was reiterated here, we definitely work in the background to figure out, I mean, these are all areas that we are talking about and we're working on, having the stakeholder meetings. We understand the concerns on some of these. And then looking at where we can fit it into the conversation, like you're saying, with, first of all, the main importance is what is our basic mandate and what can we pursue with our resources right now and what's the concern? I mean, the top priority for us is licensing. And so we have a lot of work we're doing with that right now, but additionally, though, we have recognized there is, like Sierra was bringing up, that is something that we're concerned about. But within our mandate, we've tried to do as much as we can to support, to talk to different agencies to explain to them the licensing process and why our licensees can. I mean, it's one of the things, and it's also discussing with the board chair to see, where we can kind of fit that in. So
these responses are greatly appreciated because I tell you what happens behind the scenes. They come directly to us. I don't know how many times I've been hit up via email, via social media. What happened to this? What happened to that? So making this public record. I don't want people to think that I'm putting them off or telling them to call and they don't get a response for 5 days, whatever the email looks like. But so this is helpful to be transparent and share this information.
And I can offer a suggestion too. I mean, if you do have people that reach out to you, I'd be happy to talk to them too.
Yeah,
I
I always refer them to,
so
because
please.
sometimes it's like I'm,
It's not like.
it's better to have this
I see what you're saying.
grand conversation so they can see where our hands are tied as well. We can only go so far. Thank you.
I do recall that a couple of meetings ago, I asked for the subject of insurance in general, how we would deal with it, how we would let our licensees know, whatever. And I think you said you were looking into it, but I haven't heard anything about it since.
To be honest with you, with insurance, once again, it is really a tough conversation for us to have since we really don't have any oversight with insurance companies or the payments or the regulation. But
What is available, what isn't available?
yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I think, what, and that's a good point, is the associations do a really good job of that for the licensees, and actually they have more of a voice with the licensees on those issues. So I kind of rely on that support for that, so.
Yeah, they're a great resource for that for the licensees.
All right, seeing no other suggestions, moving to item 32, public comments for items not on the agenda. And I think Mr. Jones, you have one. About a conference you have coming up?
Oh, yes. Chris Jones, LEP member. I am very excited to announce that at our at our annual, the CASP annual convention that we have secured a very prestigious keynote speaker. And I would like to make that announcement that Mr. John Sovek will be speaking on the coming out process for LGBTQ+. We are very excited to have him at our convention at the end of October. It is in Garden Grove, next to Disneyland. If anyone would like to attend just the keynote, then let me know, and I know a guy, so we can probably get you in. It's, I believe, Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday, usually about 10 a.m. So we're really excited, especially in our current climate, to be able to have some open discussion about how to support all of our youth. So thank you, John. Looking forward to it. Hold on. I have a calendar. It should be October 29th.
Thank you. Any other board members with comments for items not on the agenda? Nope. Okay, seeing none. Any members of the public?
Kathy Atkins with CAMPT. I just wanted to thank the board for voting to move forward with the AMFTRB. I recognize it's a long road ahead with potentially off ramps depending on the direction it goes, but CAMPT appreciates on behalf of the membership the ability to have more flexibility and be able to obtain more jobs and have license portability. And CAMPT shares concerns with the board that we want to ensure a transition is what's best for both the MFTs and the consumers. But thank you for moving it forward.
Dr. Smith with the NASW California chapter LCSW. Although we had some challenges with our compact bill, we do appreciate the board's support in regards to reducing some barriers to licensure. After you all support the conference in October, we hope that you support our conference in November. It will be in Irvine. On November 13th, we do have a student symposium where we will have presentations led by students, and the committee that is supporting the symposium is full of social work students as well. So it is facilitated by and supported by students. On the 14th and 15th of November, we have the professional conference where our keynote speaker is attorney Nana Guanti, and she will be talking about immigration rights as the executive director for the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. And I would also just like to thank the BBS for also coming to do a session there as well. So thank you for all of your support.
Good afternoon. I'm Rick McCarthy, LMFT. I am here to respectfully recommend and request the reinstatement of some effective form of the oral exams as an essential component of the licensure process. As an LMFT with nearly 50 years of clinical experience, 28 years of teaching and supervising, and over 25 years as serving as a subject matter expert for the California Board of Behavioral Sciences, I've been deeply involved in every facet of the therapist licensure, writing and administrating the oral exams, the clinical vignette, and written exams. What I've witnessed in the years since the oral exam was eliminated in 2003 is alarming. Therapist readiness and competence has declined. Academic and supervisory programs have grown more lenient. And the most troubling of all, a growing number of therapists are entering the field without essential skills needed to serve the public. The oral exam was the gold standard, designed to assess real-world competence with a new client as they would in their practice. It evaluated how well a therapist could conceptualize a case. The board did an excellent job selecting and training highly skilled therapists who learned to discern competency from incompetency. Written tests alone cannot measure those abilities. As an oral examiner, my partner and I did everything we could to give borderline candidates the benefit of the doubt, searching for all evidence of minimal competency. Yet, roughly 60% of candidates were assessed as either clinically incompetent or even potentially dangerous. Many of these candidates are now licensed. This is a public health emergency. I encourage us not to treat it like an administrative exercise. It's like focusing on a patient's chronic illnesses while ignoring the fact they're actively bleeding out. Until we stop the immediate harm by ensuring only truly assessed, competent therapists are licensed, no amount of system reform will matter. It's time to reinstate the standard that the public can trust. Reinstating the oral exam is although complicated and complex, a necessary safeguard for the future. I do believe we care about the integrity of our profession and the well-being of the people we serve. Therefore, I strongly encourage us to act now. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Michael Kilcoyne, and I'm an LMFT. Before I began, I wanted to say something that this is my first time visiting and attending a board meeting. And I wanted to express my gratitude to everybody on the board for the time that you've put in your position and the service that you've provided to all the licensed professionals and people of California. And it didn't occur to me until I came here and sat in this room today. With that said, I'm here to endorse the points that are made by Mr. Rick McCarthy and also to respectfully request the board's consideration of possibly reinstating the oral exam as a component of the MFT license process. For 31 years, it's been an honor and a privilege for me to provide mental health services to the people of California, including working as a crisis counselor and volunteer coordinator at San Francisco Suicide Prevention, a counselor in a long-term residential facility treating people with severe mental illnesses, a counselor in court-mandated DUI counseling programs, a child trauma therapist helping youth impacted by domestic violence and abuse, an on-campus counselor at a high school during a period of teen suicides. I also served on the board of directors of the Santa Clara Valley chapter of the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. Here are just a few reasons why I recommend considering restoring the oral exam. First, that there's an assessment of communication and interpersonal skills. Effective communication is paramount in therapy. Oral exams offer a direct way to assess a candidate's verbal communication skills and their ability to build rapport, express empathy, and engage in therapeutic dialogue. There's the exploration of knowledge and understanding. Oral exams allow for a more dynamic and interactive assessment where examiners can probe deeper into a candidate's responses, clarify their understanding of complex concepts, and observe their critical thinking in action. This can differentiate between superficial and substantive knowledge and more effectively than multiple choice questions. Preparing candidates for real-world scenarios, already having gained their experience hours, still the ability to articulate a diagnosis, crisis management strategies, theoretical approaches and treatment plans verbally, as practiced in an oral exam, can better prepare candidates for the pressures and demands in real clinical situations. There's also public protection. Reinstating the oral component could be viewed as adding an extra layer of protection for the public by allowing for a more thorough and personal evaluation of a candidate's readiness to practice independently, maintaining professional and ethical boundaries, and management of countertransference. So as I was trained in graduate school, not to colonize our clientele, where we would impose our own religious, cultural, or personal beliefs upon our clients. Candidates for MFT licensure should be allowed the opportunity to demonstrate these basic therapeutic skills in the format of an oral case presentation type interview styled component to the exam. And I think that in some cases, it might represent, in a sense, as I was talking with Ben during the break, about offering an oral examination as some sort of an option, perhaps in lieu of or in addition to the written, where candidates can be given an opportunity to demonstrate their skill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I believe seeing no other public comments. Oh, one more.
I know we don't want to get out, so I apologize. I'll be very quick. So Dr. Smith, LCSW, NASW, California. I'm not sure if CAMP has a position on the oral exams. However, given the conversations that we've had multiple times, even clearly today about biases, isms, and just like the cultural humility and responsiveness that's required in standardized tests, regardless if that is considered or not, I think that that is the focal point. Whether it is going to be written or oral. Like we cannot have tests without those considerations. So I just want to land on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that moves us to item 32 or 33, adjournment. Thank you all for participating today. We'll see you at our next board meeting on November 20th and 21st in Sacramento. Thank you.